Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? We got Retro Days first. Joe, we're just going to call you Joe.
What's going on here?
Yeah, there is no second Joe. We're all equals here.
Hey, are you getting an echo?
A little one.
You're getting an echo.
Do you have? Oh, is your phone on? Maybe if you turn your phone off.
Oh, maybe that's it. Hold on. Yeah, it could be. Let me turn it off.
Remember, Joe had that problem. The other Joe had a problem with that last week.
How's that?
Keep talking. Keep talking so I can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay. All right.
So how are you, Ben? It's been a whole week. Well, not really, but how's it been the past 6 days?
Hold on.
Ben, let me do I'll take care of the reading part. You just espouse knowledge. Jason Kasky's in the house. He's a personal friend. He's a friend of the 2000 AD podcast and this one. So thank you, Jason, for showing up. Retro Days doesn't hear an echo, and Joe says sounds good too.
Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. There was an echo that was really bad.
No, you took care of it.
Okay. For some reason, I'm getting an echo on my end here. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, it's not coming up over the.
Okay, I'm going to. Okay. I'm going to go off for a little while. You keep him busy while I figure this out.
Okay.
For a little while, you keep him busy while I figure this out.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So while Ben's taking care of that, let's see. Jason Kasky says, I like to think I'm a friend of all mankind and all podcasts that I listen to. You're the friendliest guy that listens to our podcast, Jason. Rarebit Fiends, I know you guys from somewhere, Rarebit. Happy Sunday, Ben and Steve chat. I am glad this is becoming a regular thing. Joe says, hee, or is that
Jason says, sounds
Yeah, I know, Ben.
Okay, how's that?
That echoes you.
Yeah, it seems to have gotten worse. Something's going on here.
Turn your phone off.
My phone is off. It's off.
Is your mic
my phone is off.
How close is your mic to your speaker? All right, so Ben's trying to be like a techno DJ apparently. So Ben's postmodern music is too much. It's just turned into a negative land song. Yes, yes. Is V'ger on the show this week? Yeah, I wish. At least it has a nice rhythm. That's true. Echo, 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 feedback. We are lost in space. I think we're just lost in Boomerland right now because, yeah, Ben's vast wisdom is echoing. Yep. So, how is everybody? I don't know how many people we've got in the chat. Looks like 4, 5, 6. But we can have a nice little conversation now. How's everybody? What have you all been up to? Retro Days, I just corrected cryptid core number 2, and there was nothing to correct. All I did was send it back in saying like, "This is fantastic. It's uh, it's it's a little slower than the previous all action issue, but I was not bored. The character stuff was great. The art is beautiful. Um, I ordered 2 copies of the first issue and the variant because I think it's going to be a hot comic. So everybody should check out Cryptid Core. Check out Retro Days' YouTube channel. Um, Joe, you got anything going? Jason just like follows everybody and absorbs the knowledge from all of these podcasts and the bullshit. And Rarebit Fiends, where have I heard you? Where do I know you from? I know you from somewhere. So anyway, I guess I should chill Antarctic Press stuff. I think the only thing coming out this week or was Furlough, and I forgot whether it was Furlough 201 or 202.
How's,
How's that? Okay, you're silent now. If your mic is too close to the speaker, Ben, that's going to be a problem. All right. Retro Days, we broke it up so you had character development in between action issues. Yeah, that's a great idea. Remember that's what the old Chris Claremont X-Men used to do. There'd be like 6 issues or a run where there'd be like tons of action and epic stuff, and then all of a sudden they'd have a pool party, or the girls would go shopping, or it was just like little character stuff, and those were just as memorable as all the action and fight. Rarebic Fiends, I don't know, but the username is a reference to both Winsor McKay and Rick Veitch comics. That's where I remember that from. So, yeah, I'll shill hard, but not as hard as Larry.
how's that?
Keep talking.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a little echo at the tail end, but much better than that techno music you were playing before.
I have no idea what's going on with that. I guess it can't be a live stream without something going on. I don't know what the hell's
You
going
sound
on.
fine. You sound fine now.
Oh,
If you hear a little bit of an echo, just live with it because that's way better than your.
I don't know. Maybe it's the new surroundings I'm in. I don't know what's going on.
Well,
But
I can see the acoustics in the room you're in are there's going to be an echo.
that sort of sucks. I mean, you can hear it on your end, right?
No,
No, okay.
no.
I guess it's just on my end. I guess there's something wrong with my end. Okay, well, we'll just have to live with it. So at least
Yeah.
it's not as bad as it was before.
Right.
So, all right, welcome everyone. We finally got this sort of figured out. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not 100%, but at least it's like 75%, which is better than nothing. So, of course, you know me. My name is Ben Dunn, the AP Sensei. You know my bro Steve Ross. So we are going to talk about fandom. You know, that's the topic of the weekend. We're going to talk about other stuff too, stuff that's going on in the pop culture sphere, things that are going on around the world. You know, but we're going to basically talk about is fandom dead? Yeah, that's pretty loaded tagline. But I mean, I seriously think that it's certainly on life support. I mean, I don't know what fandom is nowadays, you know, but modern fandom is not anything like fandom that I grew up with in the 70s and in the 80s. All right. So for those of you who are not aware, um, there's a lot since the advent of social media. Everyone has become its own little. Everyone's become sort of their own little, fan kingdom of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be you had to connect with other people back in the day, at conventions and stuff like that. And that's no longer the case anymore. I mean, you don't see any fan clubs anymore. You don't see people gathering together just to talk about things anymore. Everything's done online. I mean, that's about as close as we're going to get to like a legitimate fandom. And the problem is that with the social media aspect of it, I mean, is it really a fandom anymore? Everyone's just got their platform that they can discuss their ideas and everything else like that. What do you think, Steve? Do you think fandom is dead, or do you think it's just evolved into something different?
I I think it's different, and as much as I loathe to disagree with you on anything, there are still fan clubs. If you go to the like when I go to one, it depends on the size of the convention you go to, maybe or where you are. But like when I go to WonderCon, they've got like a fan club that builds R2D2 units. They've got like all the big franchises, Firefly, Battlestar Galactica, uh, I think there's still even a V fan club out there. They show up and they show up in their cosplay and they give out flyers. You can join the club and have sign up sheets and all that. So there's still stuff out there, and there's also like you said, there's like the more micro fiefdoms where it's like somebody you've never heard of, but they've written a book and they've created a fan club for themselves or something like that.
Well, it
So
seems to me that fandom is no longer just a thing where people get together to share the joy of something. It
mhm.
seems like fandom has gotten together to criticize, to lambaste, to not really get together to enjoy something. All I
Well,
really see nowadays is people who especially like on the YouTube and on social media.
well, yeah.
It's everyone is criticizing the what people are making nowadays. I mean, no, I very rarely talk about the people very rarely talk about things anymore where they actually share in the joy of something. Yeah, and I just think that as a collective for fans, it's no longer fandom. It's just a collection of people who are fans of something and have decided to make their opinions known to the rest of the world.
All right, I have some thoughts, but I'm gonna read off some chat.
Sure, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so Jason Caskey says, and Jason's in Iowa, so it's kind of small townish stuff. We still have a healthy, active local comic book club in Des Moines, in the Des Moines area. Joe says, I think the most likely culprit is gain being set too high, either on the mic input. Oh, he's helping you out with the
Oh,
okay. Gain being set too high on the mic input, audio interface, or inside the streaming software.
well, you're not
Uh,
having any problem.
yeah, you're getting a little technical there, egghead.
Well,
Real
I've been fooling around with the settings, and this is the best I can get right now.
you
I'll
found
figure it
you
out later.
sound just like you sounded last week, so just
Okay,
don't
okay.
don't
It's on my end,
don't
obviously.
touch it.
It's on
Rabbit
my.
Fiend says money infesting every part of fandom has made it less personal and fun. IMO. When nerd interests went mainstream in the early 2000s, things got diluted, and then everyone tried to monetize everything. That's a bingo for me. What do you think, Ben?
Well, I agree. I mean, the thing is and this is something I've noticed recently, is that the term toxic fans. I
Hmm.
mean, that's a term that we didn't used to use back in the day. I mean, yeah, creators back in the day, publishers, they had to deal with the fan, but they usually didn't attack them. Okay,
Hmm.
they didn't usually insult them or call them names like people nowadays are willing to do. I mean, it seems very odd to me that people who are in the creative end, who rely on people who are wanting to support their creative output, would actually disparage the very people that are they're supposed to pay money, to support their endeavors. And that's where I think things are starting to go south as far as fandom is concerned. I mean, I can't blame them. I can't blame fans for turning against creators, but creators for some reason, and this is nothing new. I mean, creators but usually it was usually confined. You
Right.
know what I mean? They were usually confined to a small area, or, I mean, there were creators who were definitely, Harlan Ellison was infamous for,
He
uh,
would get in fist fights with people in
oh
elevators
yeah,
at
I mean,
conventions.
but he was rare. He
Yeah.
was actually kind of a rare. Now it's almost like every single creator uh, who reads a critique of their work suddenly just goes off the deep end and starts attacking, fans. It doesn't make any sense to me. You know.
Okay. So yeah, it's kind of like the Jerry Springeritization of fandom, but also I think that uh,
Like, what do you think of the term toxic fans? I mean, what do you think of that?
well, I think that's always kind of been a thing, but there's also I also think that the fact that like creatives are much more approachable now, because like before you used to have to sit
Oh,
down
I
and
disagree. I don't think creators are approachable at all. You
well, I mean, maybe you don't want to approach them, but like you can send them a like they'll be on a live stream and like us. I mean, like this is I mean, you're talking to this is the first time you've talked to your fans en masse, you know, since I think I've known you. You've done live streams and you've done interviews before, but this is like you're in real time talking to them here. Usually, like before, it's been Facebook, right? They could comment on your posts and all that, but I think but like now you can send them an email or you can contact them through Messenger or they'll post something online and people respond like right away in the comments and or on X especially too. That's which has just become like, you know, that's what you do there. But
Well, I mean, if you know, of course, you know this. Back in the day, there was a publicist, especially for famous people who, I mean, they couldn't answer every single piece of fan mail that would come, when back in the day, they would actually hire somebody who actually would tackle that kind of to
right.
tackle their fans, basically.
And
Now
it
with
was rare if
social
you got a
media,
personal response from the celebrity too. You know,
sometimes you would.
you would sometimes you would, but it was usually sometimes it'd be just like a form letter or something from the fan club or whatever.
Yeah, 8 by 10 photo glossy or whatever, they would
I got
send.
one from Elvira. So
Yeah.
the but now you can it's much more direct and I think and the dog piling there's like dog piling especially over political stuff um and the whole politics thing has become like a topic that wasn't as much of a topic as it was back in the day. It was just kind of like how about it was like on
Now,
that Simpsons gag is like how about those clowns in Congress? What a bunch of clowns, you know.
well, politicians are different from creators. You
Okay,
know what they say about.
let me get the chat for you, Ben.
All right, go ahead.
Let's see. A mix of fans. Okay, so Jason said a mix of fans from all walks of life. Age range is from the 20s and 40s. They put on small local one-day comic shows twice a year. That's Jason from Iowa. That's his comic book fan club. Rarebit Fiend says negative Nancy's are all carpetbaggers trying to make a buck. There's truth to that. There's much more attention given to negativity than positivity, which is why we only get a few hundred views and those other guys get a few thousand views. So Jason says, granted, Iowa is slow to change and so many ways.
All time. Yeah, it's
Retro
true.
Days says, small town life rules. Joe says, there are fans who are temporary, only fans during the height of fandom, then bandwagon jump to the next thing.
All right.
So
Well,
is
let me clarify what I mean by fandom. Okay. What I mean by fandom is that usually it was a group of people who are passionate about a certain thing that would gather together to celebrate that thing or to discuss, the nuances of conspiracy theories, your fan thing, what do you call them? Fan stories based in that
Hmm.
universe, things like that. And they would create things like appas. For those of you who don't know what an appa is,
You better explain that one. I had to
yeah, an
explain that to a
appa
friend of
was a
mine.
collection of letters and stories and fan art that were collected in a booklet, where that was shared with all the members of that particular club. Now you can, and that was a physical way of showing, that you were passionate about something. Now, there used to be fan clubs. I mean, the publishers themselves would have fan clubs to for people to join, and they would get
Right.
all sorts of little goodies and stuff like that. You know, it now it's like you said, it's just all about to make a buck. It seems like um, the only thing creators look at when they see a fan is how much money they can get from you. They don't
Yeah.
actually genuinely, feel like they have to support what people are doing.
Hmm.
And it's changed so much that there's. I mean, it's one thing to get a group of your friends together, to talk about things, but I'm talking about uh, the people who were passionate enough. I mean, that the fans like use Star Trek for instance. It was the Star Trek fans that brought Star Trek back from the dead. If it wasn't for
Hmm.
them, Star Trek would just have been another sci-fi show that would have been forgotten. That aired in the '60s. It was the fans that brought it back. And I'm not saying the fans don't have um, have a what do you call it? A drive, to bring something back. All right. It's just that it seems to me that collectively, fandom is no longer what it was back in the day. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. So I have some stories about that. So what you're saying, so on the back of what you're saying, and on the back of what Joe was saying. Okay, so first let me address what Joe said about the fans being temporary. So before it was like you really had to be a geek to call yourself a fan, right? And like you posted a video from like the 90s, like Comic-Con at the 90s, and I was shocked because like almost everybody was wearing like a normal shirt like you're wearing now, and hardly anybody was wearing like a t-shirt because at that time only Graffiti Graphics was making like t-shirts of nerd and pop culture comic stuff for fans. Now you go to Comic Con and it's like dad went to Target and bought himself a Captain America Shield shirt, and he's an instant geek. And this family of four that maybe only saw like a few of the Marvel movies, they're fans. And the geeks who have been, I know a guy who's donated to the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund and loyally follows like Stan Sakai oh, who's the guy who does Bone Smith?
Yeah, Jeff Smith.
Follows Jeff Smith and like that he lives to go see them in person at Comic Con. He doesn't know if he's going to get in from year to year because like a lot of these fans who just saw a few MCU movies, and I know that sounds like gatekeeping, but I'm just saying like that's a true example of what's going on. So,
Yeah.
um, but
Howdy.
but as far as like the fan clubs go, so I've joined different fan clubs over the years, and some of them are cool and some of them are trash. And sometimes the trash ones are the ones that are like the official one because they're handled by a fan club company. And sometimes all you ever do is you get the fan club kit, which is like some paper goods and a sticker, and that's it. Because I do you know who's man enough for Megaforce? I am. I sent in a self-addressed stamped envelope on when I saw that ad on the back of the comics, and I got the Megaforce membership kit, which is like a card, a sticker. I think it was like an iron-on patch.
Well, the thing
And
is,
that's the last I heard from Megaforce. They never called me up.
the thing is that I think the role of a fan has changed over the decades. I think with with corporations, especially entertainment corporations, seeing how much money they can make off the fans of whatever IP they have, I think they've tapped. It used to be once the show was one and done, it was just they
It was
moved on.
gone forever.
The fans were the ones who kept things alive.
Right.
Okay, now the these big entertainment corporations, they actively uh, try to appeal to fans of the show, not to the fans in of themselves, but to people's sense of nostalgia, so to speak. And that's the thing that is different nowadays. There's no there's no real passion from fans nowadays that the corporate entertainment companies care about anymore. They only care about the money that you can give them for their product. And that's pretty much so. It's all about the product now. It's not about the content. It's about the product. And that's where I think it's changed. And that's where we're losing something. As far as um, as far as being able to connect with a certain IP. I mean, are you a fan of something because it's popular, or are you a fan of something because you genuinely love the IP?
Most of the stuff that I'm a fan of, back in the day, you really had to go to the fan club to find anything about it. I mean, there was like, so you had me, you had me down here, Steve-O. I'm definitely a okay. Let me go back to the answers, and then I'll throw in an answer too. Retro Day says it's too common for companies and fans to be at each other's throats now. Rabbit Fiend says pros sharing too much on social media polarizes people. I suspect fans haven't been raised learning to keep away from religion and politics in public conversation for a couple of generations. So on the back of Rabbit Fiend's comment about it just being some celebrities and people just being too accessible, and like you don't have time to miss them. I mean, it's what they say, like familiarity breeds contempt.
That's
Because
true.
you got me down to Steve-O. I'm a big Devo fan. I'm also a big Gary Newman fan. I joined Gary Newman's fan club, which was actually run by his mother, and I'd get the quarterly newsletter and the stuff, the kit you get the kit when you join, and then you get a newsletter, and then I'd get a little handwritten note from his mother saying thanks for being a member, so that felt very homey, and then the newsletter even had like it was typed up, and there's typos in it, misspellings and everything. I felt very connected, like it was a small group of very devoted fans, especially during that time from like the mid to late 80s till the mid 90s. I mean, you didn't hear anything about that guy unless you were like a fan, and you basically heard it from his mom.
Yeah.
So 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 there's that, and I didn't mind sending my money to them because it like went right to the source. But he said that to raise some money, like his career wasn't doing gangbusters in the late 80s, early 90s. So to raise some money, he started a phone line, like one of those. Remember those like 900 lines or whatever? They charge you like $1 a minute. So he said the same fans kept calling him over and over again, and then he'd run this contest where you could go. They'd pick a day, like a Saturday, where they would go do a group activity for the fan club, and he said the same people would show up all the time, and he stopped doing it because they got too familiar with him. It just became like, more like friends than fans, and he was like, he wanted to keep some of the mystery, some of the
Yeah.
mystique.
Yeah. Well, definitely, there is a balance to be had because there can be obsessive fans that can turn out to be rather dangerous.
Yes.
Get to the point where they become obsessive, and that's definitely not a good thing. I'm just talking about just fandom in general.
Did you ever
Things.
have a stalker, Ben?
No, I've never had a stalker. I mean, I'm not that famous, to be
Well,
honest.
well, let me, okay,
But
to be fair, let me ask you this. Did your characters ever have stalkers? Because
I
sometimes
don't know.
sometimes
I,
that happens too.
I don't know. I've never experienced it. I guess it's one of those things that if it gets to that point, then definitely we're getting to mental health territory
Right.
there.
Uh,
What I mean generally is that it just seems that there's something missing in fans nowadays. I'm not just trying to disparage modern day fans at all. And of course, being a fan of something is one thing, but being obsessed with something is another thing entirely. What I'm trying to get at is, there doesn't seem to be any gathering of. I mean, I remember. Do you remember bulletin boards back in the day? You know,
sure. I was
yes,
on several of those. That's
yeah,
the Micronaut fan groups and
yes.
Beatle
And
fan groups.
now it seems like any fan can create a page, and start promoting whatever they want to say, and that's fine. That it's into so much. It's not fandom has disappeared. Okay, it's just evolving to something different. Okay.
So going back to the old writing a letter days, one of the things that has changed. Please, Steve, please tell me you still have some of that Gary Newman memorabilia. Show it off. I don't have any here in the closet, but I still have all of it.
Well, maybe you
All
should
of
bring it
it.
by sometime.
But when one day when we have the special Gary Newman live stream, I will bore you personally with all of that stuff.
Well,
Um,
I also
and,
think, yeah,
but
go ahead. I'm sorry.
but like so going back to the old writing a letter days, I remember like the AP books would have, and okay, so the other comic company that I love that's not AP is AC Comics and Femforce, and you get like these 2 and 3 page letter pages with paragraphs of text, and the fans would write in and say, go into the storylines and talk about the characters and what issues they liked, and the inking on this one wasn't as good as before, and like deep dives into the what they had just read in this comic, and then you'd print letter. Sometimes people would print the address, and you could write letters back and forth that way. So,
Well,
and
that's how
that
people used to connect.
yeah,
But before they Marvel and DC used to print the addresses of the people who wrote letters back then. I
yeah.
think that caused the problem, but now you can just email. So I'm thinking that maybe that I'm being hyperbolic when it comes to saying that fandom is dead. I don't think fandom is dead per se. I just think it's evolved to something a little bit different and more personal. And it's just that the thing I'm seeing is that it's the hostility that creators are showing to, because I'm sure when you have something that's really popular, you're going
Yeah,
to get a huge amount of you know critique,
right.
so to speak, because you're not going to satisfy everyone. It used to be a creator would create something and you would let the work speak for itself. If
Right,
you either liked it or you didn't like it,
right,
if you didn't like it, you didn't read it or you didn't buy it. That was the end of it. Okay. If you did like it, you would buy it and you would show if you were passionate about it, you would show your appreciation by complimenting the creator.
right.
And that would be the end of it. But now with instantaneous social media, you can, and with the anonymity of the internet, you can spout off whatever you want, and it can critique or insult somebody, for the amusement of literally thousands, if not millions, of readers. You see,
So yes, and I think also the other thing that's changed is on the back of what I was saying about the people who would like take the time to write you a long letter about the work you had just done. I don't see that at all, virtually at all anymore. Like in the AC Comics group, nobody puts like long on Facebook. Nobody puts like long comments about like, oh, this issue was
Yes, you
special.
see, that's another thing that's missing.
Right.
Okay, nobody actually puts out thoughtful dissertations of what they've just read, or
I
what they've just
I
seen.
okay.
All they say is they pare it down to a TikTok thing where or just say I didn't like it, or
Right.
this sucked,
Right.
and without going into nuance,
Right.
without going into why he didn't like a particular thing, because that takes some thought,
Right.
and that takes some real, real absorbing of the material.
So here's an example from my point of view, and I don't want this to be like a poor me story. I'm using it as an example, and also because I don't have um, anyway, so I don't have any claim on the things that I'm going to be talking about, other than I don't have any creative claim per se on the things I'm going to talk about. Most of these days, people don't have the basic English skills to write an actual letter.
Oh,
That
that's
is true,
sad.
Jason
That
Cassidy.
is sad.
Um,
What does that say about our education system?
well, I mean, it's not, but it's not just that. Because let's face it, a lot of the fans who are left are our age. The fans that we're
Well,
targeting and would interact with.
I will say that back when you had to write a physical letter,
Yeah,
you would have to think out what you're going to write. I mean, it takes time to write a
yeah.
letter, it takes time to put that letter in the mail and send it off. I mean, you really had to think about what you were writing. You couldn't just write a one sentence letter, and put a stamp on it and send it out. I mean, you could, but
Some people did, but
yeah, some people did.
hey, remember? Okay, since we got a bunch of fellow old farts in the thing, remember TM Maple? That
Yes, I
guy.
remember. I remember.
He used to write in the Comics Buyer's Guide and have like something to say about everything, and you'd see him in the letters pages of like half the, especially like the indie comics. He'd be publishing. He'd be publishing, but also you kind of, when you were writing that letter to the comic, you knew that an editor was going to read it and decide whether I only write strongly worded letters these days, says the like Art and Times of Jay Ryan.
Worst
But
episode ever.
yes, it's fun to. Rarebit Fiend says it's fun to scan through old letter columns looking for names of pros before they were pro. True. My fave is in Jack Kirby's Captain Victory #2, the blowhard Tom Brevoort, who called himself X the Unknown. So, well,
Well,
here's my claim. Here's one of my claim to fames for that. When I was a teenager, I wrote letters to the Micronauts comics. I like 3 of them, and now when they've reprinted those big $125 omnibuses, they reprinted the letters pages with the addresses. So
oh wow.
I don't live there anymore. So if you want to send like
Wouldn't that
flaming dog
open them
shit in
up
the
to?
mail, you can't send it to that
Wouldn't
address.
that
I'm
open
not
them up to
there.
liability if they printed dresses?
So, but anyway, what I was gonna. So here's the thing. Like I put out like I worked on Jungle Comics. I did, I don't know how, like what was it, like six half dozen, somewhere between a dozen, half dozen issues of Jungle Comics, and I translated, lettered. Uh, I brought in my friend Stephen Reed's story that I scripted based on his creation and storytelling and all that. So I did, Brian Denham did a lot. Please don't get too far ahead, Ben. I want to.
I know. I'm just going to.
So anyway, I did a lot of, you know, this, that, and the other thing, you could say. And so I was looking for online reviews of it, and I found like 3, and one of them was a YouTube review of a guy named who calls himself Decepticon. His name's Sean, so he's Decepticon because he's a Transformers fan. And we became friends. We've become friends, but and we became friends with J-Man, as a result of all that. But that's like one guy, and there was another guy who I think Danny Ferbert did some reviews, and I know Danny. And there was a third guy who was like following Zan of the Jungle on X, and he said
Well,
like, oh, there's a
you
new.
actually bring up a good point. Okay, in that this when they share love of certain IP through fandom, that's how you get to meet new friends. And
Right.
that's how you make connections.
Right.
With social media, it's far harder to, you know, to vet somebody, whether or not he's actually a fan or not.
Right.
You know, but I'm not saying you should be suspicious of everyone, but you certainly, I mean, just like in the past, you had to be careful of who you're dealing with,
Yeah.
'cause, there's some crazies out there for sure.
Well, okay. So speaking of crazies, and speaking of exactly what you're talking about, so Ben and I are fans of Japanese live action, whatever, pretty much like superheroes, Godzilla movies, kaiju,
So
tokusatsu. Is that the word you're trying to
Tatsu,
say?
yes,
Okay, tokusatsu.
tokusatsu.
Yeah, so let's just call it tokusatsu. If you know what tokusatsu is, that's what it is. But if you don't know, it's Godzilla movies, the live action superheroes, Super
Anything with
Sentai.
special effects.
Yeah, pretty much all the pre Power Rangers stuff. So and we like Shaw Brothers kung fu movies like Super Inframan, and I love stuff from India, and then I love weird crap from like other countries that aren't known for having live action superheroes like Indonesia or Malaysia or whatever. Um, so anyway, back in the day, back in the late 80s and 90s, there was like one other guy that I knew of who had a fanzine called, it was originally called Japan Heroes, and then it became Oriental Cinema. And Oriental Cinema was the brand for like a long time.
I do remember that magazine.
Oriental Cinema, and then it became Oriental Cinema and Video, I think when it was bought by Draculina, and then he got it back. So that guy's name was Damon Foster. And so I sent him a fan letter, and then I sent him a VHS tape of a backyard kung fu movie that I had made, because he was making like VHS tapes of his own movies, and they were insane. They were just pure amateur shot on video craziness, and it was as punk rock as it could be.
Maybe we should take a look at some of those old films one of these days.
I would be delighted to inflict those on our new.
We may actually get into that. So,
so my point is with Damon Foster, I sent him a letter. I sent him the tapes. He answered back. We would chat on the phone once in a while. He was working on a project out here. He came out to visit. I got to meet him in person for the first time. We'd been friends for literally decades, and I met him for the first time maybe like just before the lockdowns. And now he's back to making movies. And he discovered After Effects, and God help all of us, the stuff he's doing with After Effects is even crazier than the stuff he did with analog. And so you get these like lifelong friends like Damon, and then I sent Ben some of those magazines, and he actually made one of the monsters in Warrior Nun is named Demon Foster.
yep.
So
yeah, that was an homage to him.
Yeah, so I mean,
Okay.
that's David Foster going viral to two people.
You bring up an interesting point. Okay, so Rare Beats Fiend says it's fun to scan through the old letters columns for names of pros before they're pro. And see, that's another thing about fandom is that a lot of them, at least back in the day, would eventually work their way up, the ladder, and actually start working, in the very business that they were fans of,
Mhm.
So that is also another thing that I'm not sure whether or not, and that leads into what you just brought up, is that when you were doing it, you had 8mm cameras, you had primitive VHS recorders. We were very analog.
Oh, yeah.
But with
We're exclusively analog.
fans themselves are producing the same level of quality that the people who own these IPs are doing. Okay, if not better. Okay, they're actually, in many cases, they're doing stories and special effect productions that are almost on level of these $1 million productions that the actual and I see that it can be very liberating for a fan nowadays, that any fan with enough talent and access to technology can now produce their own versions of the very IP they're fans of.
Well, here's the other thing too. Like those guys, Bat and the Sun, who did the cosplayer. They're like cosplayers who make movies and fan films. When they did that Batman versus Predator thing, and you got to see a live action Batman that looked just like an Alex Ross painting, like fans just went nuts. And it's frankly a pretty boring fan film, but it does show off the costumes, and it's like Batman's like looking like the Batman you always imagine moving around, and it looks pretty cool. I mean, it doesn't look practical. I mean, you wouldn't want to
Well,
actually fight crime in that
but
costume,
the
but it
thing
looks
is, you know,
cool.
what I am impressed is that they're fans enough of the IP that they actually went out and did it. You
Right,
see, it's one thing to be a fan, a passive. This is where the two camps. There's the passive fan and there's the active fan. Now, a
right,
passive fan is just somebody who's just a fan of something and just wants to enjoy it.
right.
Okay, you know, the casual Star Trek fan who just watches every episode and just leave it. And then you have the active fan who
Hmm.
actually want to get into actually doing the IP that they love. You know,
Right.
if they're a Star Trek fan or a Star Wars fan or a Stargate fan or whatever, you know,
Hmm.
they are passionate enough to want to actually produce their own material so that they can make their own mark on the IP. You see, you
See
know.
here, okay, so here's another deep thought too. Marvel doxed you, Steve. Well, no, Ben, don't keep going forward with the thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Hold
reading
hold
the.
hold the chat,
Okay.
and then we'll move on.
Right. Okay. No
Well,
problem.
well,
It's just piling up.
it's okay. No, they're pausing. We're keeping up
Yeah,
fine.
our fans understand.
We don't have like thousands of people trying to get their 2 cents in. These are the real fans who
Yeah,
think
that's right.
that it right.
Here we love our fans.
We do. All six of them. No, just
Hey,
kidding.
I
Hey,
value every single one of
I'd
them.
rather have 6 fans who we all genuinely like than 1,000 fans who are trying
Absolutely.
to, you know,
And that's how you build it, one fan at a time. You
one
know, that's
fan
how
at
you
a
do it.
time.
One fan at a time.
So, anyway, so the going back to the people who want to get in, like Bat in the Sun, it's very clear that they wanted to use their fan films and all that as a stepping stone to get into, regular movie making, right? Or maybe the
Mhm.
industry. But they've kind of been able to parlay that into their own little thing. Like they don't need to go to Paramount or a big studio. They've got their own studio, and they've made that White Dragon movie, which I backed, and I'm still waiting for it to see it come out. And they've made that Valiant web series, that the official Valiant web series that isn't great, but to its credit, it looks almost exactly like as close to the comics as anybody's going to get. But here's what now. I mean, I hate to keep praising the evil AI. It has its ups, it has its downs. That was a discussion for last week. But the right now, I think the revelation was She-Hulk when it came out that the people they were like aggressively discouraging people from reading the comics in the writers' room. Now we have, well, like back in the day, like you and I are old. We remember like 70s Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man. We remember Reb Brown Captain America. Probably the best of them was we remember Kathy Lee Crawford, Kathy Lee Crosby, Wonder Woman, and like the comic books were considered kid stuff. And so the people in the studios and the directors and a lot of the adults who had to make the adaptations of them, they were kind of embarrassed to be doing a comic book thing because they didn't want to be perceived doing just kiddie stuff. And so they would make these changes to it to try to, first of all, they were trying to change it because the special effects and the budgets wouldn't accommodate the superpowers and the fights and the epic spectacle storylines. But also, they would change it to make it more believable to the adults in the room that might be watching it with their kids. And the results were often not good. Like Nicholas Hammond Spider Man, you waited for the whole freaking episode to see Spider-Man, and it'd be like 5 minutes at the very end of the episode, and chances are it was the same stock footage of him climbing up the building and everything. Same thing with the Hulk. Now Hulk was kind of an exception because the drama leading up to the Hulk stuff was generally pretty good. As an adult, it was like, okay, this is watchable, and then you get to the Hulk stuff. But as a kid, you're like, damn it, quit talking and just show me the Hulk. And instead, you like crunch a trash can and lift a car maybe. But it wasn't like the Hulk from the comics where he'd like be pulling chunk of asphalt out of the sidewalk and throwing it at robots and stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't about the Hulk in of itself. It was about the human drama.
Right. So
That's
so
what we're
that
trying to do.
that was a successful version of what they were trying to do. But then when the MCU came along, it felt like the people behind it cared and were fans
At first.
at first, and it feels like they came up with a Google Doc and said, "Okay, this will be 5 pages of if as long as we have these elements in there, 3 generations of fans will recognize this as Iron Man." It's like he gets injured in some foreign country we're at war at. He creates the heart thing. He's got a bad heart, so he fixes that. Da 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 da. There's a Pepper Potts. All it's like these are this. We just have to follow this, and they did it for each character up until the Avengers, and then and then kind of after the Avengers, actually, as much as I love Guardians of the Galaxy, that was the movie that made Marvel arrogant. Like they said, that was the movie where they
I,
said,
I disagree. I don't think it made them arrogant. I think what it made them is that it was unexpected. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is that Guardians of the Galaxy was the first the MC movies that nobody actually knew who they were.
right, right.
Okay, they didn't have any idea. They took a chance. Okay, that they could pull this off, and lo and behold, it became a huge hit. But then what happened was that they took the wrong lessons from that movie. They felt that it became a hit because oh, he did this little quirk. They did this little quirky stuff. They started
Hmm.
doing all this meta stuff in there, and they thought, see, no, it wasn't. It was good characterization and a good story.
So here's,
And
but here's the thing about that movie in particular. People credit like James Gunn, blah 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 blah. The woman who wrote the first draft of that screenplay, um, for reasons unknown, she picked that team, and she stuck really closely to the run of the comics from that time. The comics eventually got canceled because I guess they weren't selling that well. But there was a British guy who came from 2000 AD because everything comes back to 2000 AD. He was a 2000 AD writer who took all who he knew the characters well enough that he took all these dollar bin characters like Rocket Raccoon and Star Lord. They were all like none of those comics were chase comics or valuable or collectible before the before he brought them together for Guardians of the Galaxy. So the joke was we took the C title team and we took all these C characters and put them together like the Dirty Dozen, like the Expendables, and did a story. That was the premise from that of the comic. And the woman who wrote the screenplay, I don't even know if she understood that was the meta story behind the comics, but she picked up on that these are like lame loser characters and made that. And then James Gunn came in, and not to diminish what he did, but he James Gunnified it, and that made it even more fun and funny. And then he tried to get her name off the writer. She he wanted her writing credit eliminated, and so she fought, and he was pissed off at her. And basically, that's why you would think that the woman who made the highest grossing Marvel movie of that time would go on to do great things or be invited to do part two and part three. But James Gunn elbowed her aside, and that's part of why part two and part three aren't as liked as the first one. But
they still did well. Well, let's catch up
they
on some of these chats here.
well wait. So the point I'm trying to make is that the after Guardians of the Galaxy, um, Marvel just kind of said, "Oh, well, we can take any loser character that we have nobody's heard of, and people will like it because it's part of the thing." So they tried to do like Moon Knight and whatever, and they just like changed the shit out of it. And then when they got to She-Hulk, it was like, how hard would it have been to do Ally McBeal with superpowers?
They
That's what
did,
the
they,
problem.
They should
That's
have
where
just
the
stuck with the
comment
John
was.
Byrne run, man. That's all,
Well, not even the John Byrne. I
they
thought
should,
the Dan
that would have
Slott
been so
one.
simple. But the thing is that's the thing, is that we're not in control of that. Okay, you and
Right.
I make the only thing we can do is show our displeasure. Okay,
Well, no, no. Now here's the point I'm trying to make.
well, only
Now with the new AI stuff, I saw an MCU fight with costumed accurate characters that looked pretty real. You could tell it was AI, but it was like one step aside from being real. Costume accurate Photon and Juggernaut and She-Hulk and Tigra doing superhero stuff. And like I said, it wasn't perfect, but there will come a time when the fans can say, you know what? I don't like what official Marvel's doing. I'll do my own. And
well, that's
look,
the problem. Okay,
yeah,
is that they don't own the IP. Okay, you can
well, I
do
know,
that,
but
and you can do
they can
that.
show Marvel like this
Yeah,
is what we want to see, but
it's
then
like
Marvel just craps on them.
it's the digital equivalent of fan art. Okay,
Right.
that's what it is. Okay, I think as long as you share it, among your close knit group of friends, you share within the fandom. I mean, I don't know what the legality of that is. It's one of those things that you can do it, but then you taking a chance that the guys who own the IP are going to shut it down. Say you cut that shit out. But I mean, it doesn't mean that fans won't stop doing it. It just means that but
Right.
so okay, let's catch up on some of these chats
Okay,
here. Social media.
let me take care of the reading
Uh,
here. Some creators get hyper fixated on their own creation, strongly believing it is the best thing ever, and take it as a personal assault when others disagree.
Yeah, I mean that's true. But then, if you're the creator of something and someone disparages it, yeah, you're going to want to defend it. But defend the work. Don't insult the fans. Okay, that's the key element here. If you start calling people names and disrespect your fans or your potential fans, then you're going to lose them. But
Right.
if you defend the work and say, okay, well, this is what I was trying to say with this character. This is what I was trying to say with this story plot element. Then maybe you might convince the person who might not have understood the nuance of your work. Maybe he might change his mind. And say, okay, now I understand. But the minute you attack somebody on a personal level, you've lost that person, for good, really.
Right.
And that's why you should avoid doing that at all costs. Because once you lose a fan, it's very difficult to get them back. You know, very difficult.
So, Rabbit Fiend says Marvel docs to Steve. The Crooked Painter said social media is just sad folks trying to say something awful and dunk on each other with even shittier opinions.
Okay.
Well, at least Twitter these days.
Okay. Crooked Painter. Okay. He brings up an interesting point here. Okay. The thing is, it's not scientific, but how many people who say those kind of things are really fans? Okay.
Hmm.
Are they just people just trying to get a reaction out of somebody because they can? Okay, because with anonymity and the way things are, they're just trying to, show off basically, that I'm edgy or, I'm creative. So that's another thing is it's hard to differentiate people who are posting about something, whether or not they're genuinely interested in that IP or creation, as opposed to someone who's just trying to stop, create trouble, stir the pot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to the art and times of Jay Ryan, I only post the most sublime think pieces at
I
the
am
Crooked
sure you do.
Painter.
Very sublime. I like that.
Jay also goes on to say, operate in good faith, but always protect yourself.
Oh yes. The
Crooked Painter
that's
says, hey, Jay Ryan caught the show a couple of days ago. Good show. So I guess Jay Ryan's got a thing going on.
we welcome you.
Joe says, another issue with the long-standing IPs is that new writers want to put their stamp on it and they ignore iconic characterization and canon lore, which goes back to with the talented creators who don't use AI, like the Bat and the Sun, and people who do use AI and have figured out a way to make it look very, very close to what they would like to see, like from the official IP holders. Now you can show them, like, you know what, if you were going to make a He-Man movie, for example, this is what I would like to see, and make it as faithful to whatever of He-Man that you actually liked. You know, combine elements of the cartoon and bubble the comics and the toys and everything. But the IP holders just get hostile towards some of these people when they try to do that. It's like the fans are like, "Hey, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help you provide content that I am willing to follow, pay money for, uh, be a fan of, and support." And then the IP holders go like, "Oh, that version is beneath me. I
Yeah,
have
well,
my own
okay.
opinion to put on that."
You have to look, to me, you have to look at an IP like a house, okay?
Hmm.
Your hardcore fans, okay, is the base, okay?
Right.
If you have good fans who are solidly behind you, you can rely on them and they'll keep the house up,
Yeah.
okay? You know, all the fixins and the little things, the thing is when you overload the house and the base starts to crack, the whole thing collapses. Okay, so if you don't please their hardcore fans first, you know, your IP is not going to be successful. This illusion, I think, is that they're trying to win over new fans with old IPs.
Right.
Okay, and new fans, okay, they don't give a shit about old IPs.
No.
Okay, they really don't. They want IPs that they can identify with. They can. Why do you think manga is kicking ass? Okay,
Well,
because it's new, it's different. You know, it's something that they can identify with. You know, I watched an interesting video just the other day about Doctor Sleep. You know, I'm not sure if you're aware of that, the Stephen King sequel to The Shining, and it
hmm.
was very interesting because the guy who directed it had to balance between Stephen King's vision of what he wanted and the movie vision that everyone knows about.
Right.
Okay? And he tried to create a juggling act that would please all of it, but it ended up being a financial flop. Now, you know, I think the movie's actually pretty good, you know,
Yeah.
and it's not a bad sequel to The Shining, but you know, is it a sequel to Stephen King or is it a sequel to the movie? That's where I think people got lost. And that was a 40-year-old IP that honestly I think most people don't give a crap about. I mean, it's a great movie, okay, but why do a sequel to a movie that you know that and that's the thing. Why are
Well, in the case of The Shining, part of the fandom is because it's a Stanley Kubrick film. If you make a
well
Shining movie without Stanley Kubrick, you're going to
the thing
lose
about
some
The Shining
fans.
is that it's a iconic part of pop culture that
Right.
was done 40 years ago that you know has stood the test of time. Okay, you
Hmm.
know the thing about it is that is there enough of an audience out there to justify a sequel? See, this is what confuses me. Okay, you know why are so many people? I mean, so many of these who owns these old IPs, you know, think that they can win over a new audience with it. Okay,
Okay.
you know,
So,
it makes no sense to me. You know, it would make more sense to me if you took the idea and made something new, like
mhm,
George Lucas did. I think personally, if George Lucas had done Flash Gordon, he would
it
not
would,
have made an impact at all.
no.
Okay, if he made Flash Gordon, it would have come and it would have been forgotten.
Right.
Okay, the mere fact that he couldn't get Flash Gordon and did a new version of it, okay, that's what became iconic.
It's
You
true.
know, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm believing that you know fans love something, but they also can create that spark for you for the fan to create something new. Okay,
Right.
create his own version of Star Wars, his own version of Star Trek, his own version of Harry Potter, whatever. You know, it creates that spark in the fan to create something of their own. Because let's face it, you can be a fan of something, but you're never going to own it.
Right.
Okay, you may work on it eventually, maybe someday, that may be your dream, but in the end, you want to own something,
Right.
and that's where you graduate from being a fan into being a creator.
Well, that's what used to happen. The path to success before used to be you'd work on you'd be like Todd McFarlane. You work on Spider-Man, and then you could go off and do your own thing and make Spawn. But right now, if you have a great idea or whatever, or if you have talent and then you have a great idea, why would you want to spend your time working on somebody else's IP? Right now, like to find who would you even pick to work on Star Wars? Because anybody who would be like anybody who's established enough to it's like you recognize their talent, they're already doing their own thing someplace else. You'd have to like lure them in to do Star Wars, and right now especially, almost nobody in their right mind would want to do that. It was like an unknown director, well, known because of THX 1138 and you know I don't remember an American Graffiti. George Lucas did like one flop, one successful movie, and then he did Star Wars. But who would you say is like the hot? Who would you try? Who's the hot director now? The guy who did like the Batman trilogy. Who am I
But
thinking?
Kevin Nolan,
Yeah, not Kevin Nolan, Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan, right.
You're thinking about comic books, Ben.
Yes. Oh,
Christopher Nolan. Yeah, it's like when you it's
John
like some people would
Favreau.
go like, "Oh boy, Christopher Nolan Star Wars movie that might be pretty good," but it's like Christopher Nolan's not going to work on those Star Wars
He
movies.
worked on Batman.
Yeah, but he doesn't need Batman anymore. He's
No,
never
but
going
he
to come
did.
back
He
and make
worked.
a fourth
The
Batman
fact
movie.
is, he worked on Batman. Okay, the
Right.
thing is, John
But
Favreau, maybe James Cameron. Yeah.
James Cameron's going to make another Avatar movie before he ever gets around to making a Star Wars movie. So anyway, okay, let me whip through the chats because I do have a thought about companies that are hostile towards their fans. Let's put a pin in that.
Okay.
Okay, so Retro Days says, "Ha, we used to make tons of VHS movies. You're a good man, Retro Days. We love you." Finger quotes, movies. You'd be surprised at how well things can be made by fans when you remove the politics and ego of the studio system. Yes, but they think
Well,
that's what
that
calls attention to it these
that's
days. That's the
interesting because
problem.
the other thing has changed is that it used to be auteur. You'd have a vision of one person, and he would create that vision. I mean, yeah, studios will sometimes come in and tweak things, but now it's almost movies are made by committee nowadays.
Right,
And everyone's supposed to put the little stamp, on a movie, so it loses its vision basically.
right. Retro Days says 6 passionate fans are equal to 100 fair-weathered ones. True.
That's true.
Crooked Painter says, "Whoa, backing movies is risky on Kickstarter." Okay, so I backed the White Dragon movie, which is the Jason. What's the name of the fellow who was played the Green Ranger?
I have no idea.
Oh, you don't know? Oh
No,
my
I don't
God.
keep up with the actors.
Okay, so the actor who passed away, he passed away before the movie came out. So they had to, before they could wrap it up, they had to do reshoots and re-editing and a bunch of other stuff. So it already took them forever because of COVID and other things. It already took them forever to get the movie close to done, and then he passed away, and then like now it's even further, and now they're playing this shell game with the distribution. So it's like me with that book that we're always talking about.
Right.
There's legitimately, I believe it's stuff that's happening and nobody saw it coming, and things happen. So I don't hate them. I'm not angry. Some people are like really hostile about how long it's taken. I backed another one called Alien Horde, where again the producer died before they got the movie out, but his brother's going to try to finish it. I think the only movie I backed that I've actually seen was Cynthia Rothrock's Black Creek, and that's no Academy Award winner right there, I'll tell you.
Oh, any movie with Cynthia Rothrock in the Hong Kong movie is worth watching.
Oh, those are classic. I mean, those are so good. that I sat through some really crappy ones that came after those
Well, I mean,
just to get a little dopamine hit like those.
we are an example of fans who like a lot of things.
Yes,
Okay, that's the thing is that we are fans of a ton of stuff.
we
You
are the
know,
polymaths of fandom.
but the thing about us is that we use that fandom, okay, to create our own thing.
Right.
Just like I was a big fan of Sun Vulcan, I
Hmm.
I took that and made Zetraman.
Yep.
I was a big fan of Urusei Yatsura, and I went ahead and made Ninja High School.
Hmm.
So fandom is important in that it creates the next generation of creators.
Well,
Okay.
it's certainly inspiring.
Yes.
Um,
You
okay,
know.
so Retro Days says, Reb Brown, I think you mean blast hard cheese. Okay, so I don't know if you know this, Retro Days, but um, I was the one who was responsible for bringing You're the Hunter from the Future to Antarctic Press. I won't bore you with the details, but I I translated it, but I also had to rewrite and edit the hell out of some of the translation because the original comic was from Argentina and came out in the 70s. And Argentinian Spanish is really flowery. It's almost like Shakespearean English. And so there was like what they were saying, the subtext of what they were saying, and the poetic way it was being said. And so I had to like get my own mental English speaking funnel and go deep dive into that and try to put the words on the page and keep as much of the meaning as I could. And you wouldn't, if you'd seen the Your Hunter from the Future movie with Reb Brown, you would never think that there was that much depth going on when from the comic. But the comic is like reading, it's like discovering Robert E. Howard had this other story that you've never heard of. And then a friend of mine sent me the You're the Hunter from the Future miniseries. The movie is an edited down version of a 4-hour TV miniseries that ran in Italy, and so he sent me the 4-hour miniseries, which I've never seen before. And the thing about that is, yes, there's a lot of more boring scenes of Reb Brown wandering around the Turkish landscape that looks like prehistoric times. But then there's extra scenes that actually makes the character stuff. There's really good character drama stuff, and they tried to be really, really faithful to the comic book. There are panels in the comic book that they, as close as they could have, brought to the screen in real live action, almost like the way Robert Rodriguez made Sin City and what's his face made Zack Snyder tried to do with Watchmen, where they were like taking panels from the comic and lining it up and trying to make it look exactly the same. This was like in the early 80s when the movie came out. That director tried to do the same thing. The silly things you remember from the movie, like when he flies in on the pterodactyl bot corpse and does the trapeze stuff at the end, that was all from the director of the movie. That wasn't in the comic. The comic was pretty serious. Um, Art and Times of Jay Ryan says the first Chris Evans Cap movie still holds up as a ton of heart. The Marvel movies fell off after the first initial wave. What do you think, Ben?
Um, well, Phase One was definitely my favorite of the MCU. I mean, after that, it just fell off the cliff for me. What was it again?
The MCU movies actually did start out. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go with the.
Yeah, I think you've lost me there.
Okay, the first Chris Evans Cap movie still holds up and has a ton of heart. The Marvel movies fell off after the first initial wave.
Yeah, I
Uh,
agree with that.
I thought there's still some good ones up until whatchamacallit, the
Oh yeah, there were.
Ultron.
I mean, there were tolerable ones. They were definitely watchable. You know, I just can't think of any. Oh, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and 3 were okay, not
Yeah,
bad.
I could barely sit through the third one though. It was funny because like the first movie had like the 70s, 80s music, and then like the next one had like they were kind of like moving out of my time as far as the music goes, and the last one had like millennial music, and I was
Mm,
like, I did not like that
yeah.
soundtrack at
I,
all.
I I really wanted to like Multiverse of Madness, and I think that if they had allowed Sam Raimi to do what he originally envisioned, I think that would have been a killer movie. You
You
know,
can totally see the scenes that have like Sam Raimi
yes,
influence and the ones
definitely.
that they came back and reshot.
But I think uh, he was overwhelmed by the studio demanding all these things that he had to be put in, like putting in Venom in Spider-Man, 3.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
we'll do we should do a movie stream in the weeks ahead.
yeah, we will.
The the thing about like the multiverse of madness again, the original plot for WandaVision was that Doctor Strange was going to come in and help, save the day, but the the political issues of him coming in and
Yeah.
you know
I mean, I was I was very much wanting to like it, but there was just too many things in there that just ruined it for me. There was a lot of good stuff in there, and
yeah,
I think I just only focused on Doctor Strange. Visiting all these, that would have been so awesome, but
right.
they had to put all these little things in there to just.
Well, they were
Uh,
also I mean, do you even remember that America Chavez was in that
I
movie?
remember, yeah.
A lot of people
Making
don't
Wanda
even
the bad guy
remember,
just didn't
huh?
seem to make much sense either. Just
No.
it didn't make any sense to me. Anyway, what can I say? Like I said, I'm not in charge of it, so I have to just accept what they put out and decide for myself whether I like it or not.
Yeah, other shills can talk about the movies. We're here for comics.
Yeah, I still like Sam Raimi though. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised how well things can be made by. Oh yeah, fans can create some of those, and that's the thing that
Where
gets me.
are you?
You know,
Oh,
I'm at the
oh,
art and times of J. Rand. You'd be surprised how well things can be made by fans when you remove the politics
and
and
the egos of the
ego. Well, you cannot remove those two things from the Hollywood system.
yeah,
You're going to have politics and you're going to have egos. But that's the thing about fans. Okay, fans can give you pure, undiluted IP. Okay,
yeah,
because they're doing it because they enjoy it, and they have a love for it. And that's the one thing that um, I think this is an untapped resource that used to be a well of knowledge for back in the day. Marvel and DC would literally go out and search for the next generation of creators.
right.
Meet them face to face. Look at their work. Give them advice on how to improve things. Now they don't do that. They go to you. They can go to scour the internet, find an artist they like, and hire them right there on the spot.
On Tumblr.
You
I remember,
know,
yeah, I
no
stood in line.
matter the thing was, they would hire artists who have never touched a Marvel product in their life, who may not
Yeah.
even read a Marvel comic.
Like I
Okay.
said, Leah Moore was found on Tumblr doing fan fiction. So
Yeah.
you got ahead of me there. So let me go back to
Okay, go
Joe.
back to
Joe says MCU movies actually did start out with a plan, Steve. You basically nailed it. But when people with a political social agendas saw the MCU as a messaging platform, oh, okay. But when people with a political social agendas saw the MCU as a messaging platform, did the movies go bad?
yeah, see, that's where your statement about arrogance comes in. Okay. Yes, Hollywood is full of arrogant people. There's no question about that. But you need to have a certain amount of arrogance because that you can't. You have to deal with a lot of people with a lot of
Right.
egos and things like that. But you cannot let it get in the way of a creative vision. Okay, when you get and this happens a lot in the creative field, is that you have one hit and you think you can do no wrong. Okay, when you have several hits, then you think you're on a roll that you can't be stopped. But everything eventually gets to the point where you think that no matter how bad an idea is, you can't go wrong with it. But even in phase one, of Marvel, the universe, not all of them were big financial successes. You
No.
know, though the Incredible Hulk movie was a huge flop, and that was their second MCU movie.
And
You
I
know,
think Captain America like underperformed, but
yeah, I mean,
it was
it did
like, you know
okay.
what, they're like, well, you know what, we're going to follow through and
Yeah.
make it happen because,
Mhm.
and they were right, you know.
They stuck to a plan. They
Yeah,
stuck to a plan,
right,
you know, and it paid off.
right. But like, you know, comics were, what he's saying too is like, comics always had like some kind of propaganda to them. You know, it was like buy war bonds, or you know, they
Yeah, I
were
mean,
they
Captain
were
America was slugging Hitler. We weren't even in the war yet.
right, right. So there was like a little, but it wasn't like you know, people say like, oh, comics were always political, and then they pull out like two or three stories from Superman where there was like some politics, and um, especially like in the 60s and 70s, there'd be like some lefty. Uh, Progressive ideas that were put forth, and but they were very mild, and it was kind of like, you know, of course we should try this sort of like brotherhood of man mentality, you know, this
Yeah,
this
well,
thing.
the thing is, it's it's easy to put in your own politics when it's a recreation that you didn't create. Okay,
Right.
you're
Well, no, but I'm saying like once the platform gets big enough, once they figured out that millions of kids are reading these comics, it's kind of like now we're gonna do stuff for the war effort, and now we're gonna um, put in some kind of propaganda and whatnot.
it's there's nothing there's nothing wrong with putting that in there.
Yeah,
Just be prepared for the fallout. And there's also you have if you're a good enough creator, enough disguise it, have
yeah,
nuance,
right,
subtext, without alienating half your potential readership. You
right.
know, you
Well,
can tell
also,
it a story with a message, you just tell it in an entertaining fashion, you
so
know.
there's a guy named Robert McKee who's like one of the top. Well, at one point he was like the top writing guy, one of the top writing guys. Like he wrote a book called Story, which was one of the gold standards of how to write for movies and screenplays and whatnot. And one of his main things was that a story is an argument, and you go like scene by scene and line by line of dialogue. It's a going back and forth of the two different ideas that are at conflict with each other, at odds with each other, and that's what the story is. And sometimes one comes out on top, sometimes the other one comes out on top, sometimes nobody comes out on top. It's just left, you know, the audience gets to decide what the resolution should have been.
Well,
And they've completely forgotten whatever they've completely forgotten what that guy said. It's just kind of like, no, I'm going to lecture you. So,
well, the thing is that there's always been a tension between creators and their fans.
mhm,
Okay, on one hand, you need your fans to keep your IP alive, and thriving. But on the other hand, you uh, uh, you have a certain vision of your creation, and you don't really want people to tell you how to take what direction to take your creation. Now,
yeah,
I, on the other hand, take sort of a more um, what do you call it? I like to be able to get ideas from outside my own because it's hard to do a comic book on a regular basis. You
yeah.
know,
Tell me about it. I
absolutely.
have nothing but respect for you and whoever else can keep a deadline.
It can be difficult, and sometimes your fans are sometimes the best resource to come up with new and interesting ideas. That's why I created things like the Ninja High School Yearbook, the swimsuit issues, and I'm doing the Tomorrow Girl annual and stuff like that because there's a huge untapped resource in your fans, that can keep your IP alive, for decades. I mean, Fred Perry's got a huge fan base for Go Digger,
Yeah,
and but the thing is about Fred is that he is an endless well of ideas, while I, on the other hand, I'm not.
No, no, well, it's different. That's all. And the other thing too is that like Fred's on Discord. I mean, he really interacts with his fans.
No, Fred has a distinct vision for his series. Okay, he
Right,
knows where it's going to go.
right,
The only thing that I could say is a drawback on that is that when you get too much into the lore, okay, where you have to read, the last 30 issues to find out what's going on, that can be detrimental to
right,
new readers.
right.
Okay, I like to keep Ninja High School episodic, where you don't have to read a mountain of back issues to understand what's going on right now. Each story is self-contained. I in a lot of ways I take the Archie approach, or the Richie Rich approach, where every story is self-contained, and you can print them out of order, and it doesn't really matter, because the stories are self-contained. You don't have to be burdened by huge mountains of continuity.
Right. Well, also Fred's stuff has been reprinted so many times and it's available digitally, so it's not exactly
Yeah, it's not hard to
you can
catch
start
up.
at the beginning pretty easily and cheaply.
Still, 300 issues is a lot of issues to.
Yeah, I started I read it sporadically back in the day, and then I was like, well, now that I've gotten to know Fred, I should really deep dive. And,
If you miss a couple of issues, you're lost.
he packs a lot in,
Yeah, he
so to
packs a
speak.
lot in for sure.
For
Okay,
now.
well, let's catch up on some of these.
Okay, let me go back to the Crooked Painter says redactions get the clicks. Art and Times of Jay Ryan says the base core fans will be the people that get you through the rough times and tell people about your work.
Yes, that's the key to fandom. Okay, and that's the thing is that I'm hoping that that is what is still, it's a cohesive glue that keeps an IP alive. Even if it's just one fan, that may keep an IP. I mean, it's important.
Okay, so Rarebit Fiend says, I wonder if it's strong ideology or just bad writing from soft headed bad writers who have a strong need for approval from their peers. Bad writers in the writer's room in the industry.
Well, I wouldn't say bad writers, just uninformed writers. Because a lot of, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that a lot of these writers who are handling old IPs didn't grow up with them.
No.
Okay. And they may be, the people who are probably handling IPs, they may have only a superficial knowledge of it.
So here's the thing. I understand the idea that the editors and whoever does the hiring of these people, I understand the idea of bringing in people whose voices are so completely new. You got a 40-year-old IP, and it's got to be getting stale pretty much. I love Zorro, but how many times can you outsmart the alcalde of the or the corrupt governor or whatever? So you got to bring somebody in to do something completely different. But when you go too completely different, you alienate the old fans.
Well,
When you
then
bring in
it
people,
ceases to become that IP.
right?
You might as well just see. That's what I don't get. If you're going to change an IP, so fundamentally different, then why don't you just create a new character?
Because the name has recognition. But
Now I see that's the fallacy. I think that the name is not as valuable or as people may think. All right.
Because 40, once you get 40, 50 years out, that name becomes something old. And then
not only
people
that,
want something old.
yeah, it's forget. It's just out of mind. Okay, I mean, think of all the great IPs that have appeared in the last 50 years. Okay, every single one of those started as a new idea.
Right.
Okay, Star Wars started as a new idea. Okay, Star Trek started as a new idea.
Right.
Okay? Every single IP, started as a new idea, and that's where I think people get lost. Is that you know, you need to create new IPs in order to keep the creative pop culture, refreshed and
Yeah,
new. You
yeah.
know?
Well, like with the, for example, with the, and there's ways to do that, but and I'll get to that in a second. But like with Star Wars, after, like I said last time, after the Ewok movies and after the Ewok cartoon and droids, Star Wars kind of went away for 17 years, and then when those novels came out, the Timothy Zahn novels, that was just like, is there still interest? And there was definitely interest because all those books went into
And Dark
bestseller.
Horse, when Dark
And the
Horse was
Dark Horse
doing
comics, I think did the novels come? I think the novels were the first thing, but then
the
the Dark Horse
expanded universe.
comics, and then once George Lucas says, "Yeah, I'm making prequels," it was like Willy Wonka reopening the chocolate factory again. It was like, oh my god, everyone went nuts because it was happy. We had time to miss Star Wars, but to just draw this straight line for like we're going to have Star Wars content every single day for another 10 years, then it's kind of like,
Same
you
with,
know what? I'm
but
good.
that's where the fans come in. They sold enough of those books, to keep the
Yeah.
IP alive. Same with Doctor Who, same with Star Trek, things like that. Now, you know, things
Doctor
like
Who
Harry
went away
Potter.
for a bunch of years too. Doctor Who went away. And when they started that up again, it was like, oh boy, Doctor Who again.
Mhm.
So, and now it's like, oh, Doctor Who
Oh
again.
yeah,
Who are they going to have?
because I think they lost sight of what Doctor Who is about. I mean, I have to next time we get David Broughton here, he needs to catch us both on British fandom and see how things. You
Oh,
know,
yeah. Yeah, I think he's got like some Space 1999 in his stuff in his studio, and it's like, tell me you're British without saying you're
I mean,
British.
do people in the United Kingdom still care about that stuff? I mean,
Oh, well, people our age, absolutely.
mhm.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, so
All right, let's keep going here.
okay, let me go back to. Okay, so Joe says I've seen it happen in both professional writing and fan fiction. The ideology he's talking about.
Mhm.
Crooked Painter says I heard somewhere Tarantino wanted to make a Star Trek. I would have seen that.
I don't know.
I don't. You know
I
what?
don't know about that.
It would be like them on the bridge, and then everybody would be smoking, and they'd be talking about stuff from the 20th century that Tarantino thinks is cool, and then like there'd be these outbreaks of really violent stuff going on, and then they'd still sit around, and then they'd play like this the cool soundtrack stuff based on uh, pop songs from the past that he found in some thrift shop on some vinyl record
I
compilation.
mean, I respect Tarantino enough, and I think he's a big fan. See, that's the thing is that I think he's fan enough of Star Trek that he would respect the lore. Now, I mean, yes, he would definitely put his stamp on it, and I think that he would probably give us, if nothing else, I think he would give us a damn entertaining Star Trek. It may not be what you're used to, but I would not put it past him because he knows that. I mean, how many IPs has he handled anyway? This would have been
None.
his first, right?
Well, unless you count the Kill Bill movies, which are basically Shaw Brothers
Yeah, but
2,
that's still his
2.0.
own creation. He owns Kill Bill.
Yeah.
I think this would be his first. Would have been his first non creator owned movie.
Which goes back to what I said. At the end of the day, he ended up not doing it because he doesn't need to be doing an IP.
Doesn't, but I think that if they had given him a chance, he would have turned in something glorious.
Yeah. Well,
We can only
we'd
we
find
can
out that
only
they.
maybe a fan one day will do what if Quentin Tarantino had done Star Trek.
What we would learn from Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek is that they're still using the N word 500 years in the future. So, Rarebit
Well, Abraham
Fiends,
Lincoln did.
Rarebit Fiends says, "Do we know which Japanese movies he was going to swipe from to make it?" That is the question, Rarebit. Yeah, he was a real firecracker in the 80s and 90s, says Art and Times of James Ryan. Crooked Painter says, "Oh, I have a credit with it in the Cynthia Rothrock Billy Blanks movie. The Last Kumite from Kickstarter. Oh, hey, I saw that. That's another one. Um,
Oh, did she crowdfund a movie?
yeah, Black Creek. That's one I backed.
Oh,
But
well,
she
see,
was she
this is
was
another thing.
she's in two crowdfunded movies. Black Creek, which is her own, and then The Last Kumite she was in with Billy Blanks.
Well, this is another thing. Okay, Fandom now has opportunity to make their own movies through crowdfunding.
Hmm.
Okay. You know, they may not necessarily be able to make a Star Trek or a Star Wars movie, you know, but they can do a Star Trek like, you know, thing. You know, I mean, like Seth MacFarlane did with the Orville. I mean, when he did that, people thought that was a joke, you know, when it
Mm.
first came out. Nobody took it seriously. But you know what? Seth MacFarlane is a Star Trek fan. Okay. And he took his love of Star Trek and he made his own thing.
Right. Yeah, there's a strong argument for the taking the thing you love and making it your own. So
Make it your own. Exactly.
so Flint Lockjaw, Stephen Reed says, can you talk a bit more about how artists are to blame for you not having a more prominent art comic book career? Asking for a friend.
He's talking about me?
No, he's talking about me because like last time I was like shitting on the artists who, you know, I wouldn't say to blame. I would
Well, do you
say,
want quality or quantity?
well, here's okay. So I mean, the thing is, I did almost all of those projects did get done. They just ended up being some Frankenstein's monster where it was started by one artist and ended by another, with shenanigans going on in between. And I wasn't exactly
Yeah.
delighted with what we had to settle for because it was all done through mail, phone calls, long
Uh,
distance phone
you
calls.
can see why some people have decided to go the AI route.
Yeah, but and you know what though? I mean, we did our best, and I still got a bunch of stories I never got done because uh,
Can't find the artist.
not a lot. It's just too much effort for too little reward. So it's like, but I still own those stories. I could do whatever I want with them now.
Well,
So
the work should be its own reward.
yeah, right. Well, since Stephen Reed is in the house and Flint Lockjock is with us, I would like to address something I said last time, and I may have spoken out of turn, and he accuses me of not taking responsibility for when I'm wrong. I will take responsibility if I'm wrong. But let me ask you some questions about the Warrior Nun animated trailer that you got. How
Sure.
much did that cost?
At the time, 1995,
Yeah.
$45,000.
Okay. Now, do I remember correctly that Will Mignot helped you produce that?
Yes.
And who did the actual work? Was it the Jap? What was it? It was the Japanese studio that did Dirty Pair. What was that?
The Nippon Sunrise.
Nippon Sunrise. So it was
Same studio that Gundam.
so in the same and Dirty Pair, right?
Yes.
Okay. So during the 90s, that was what like when Japan was very economically strong, and so like the yen was very strong compared to the dollar. So everything would have cost more because you
Well,
couldn't.
the yen was almost at parity with the dollar at the time because they
Okay.
were going through that whole uh, economic crash, you
Oh, so
know.
that was at that time then.
Yeah.
Okay. So and it was done, but it was done like 100% old fashioned
Yeah.
animation,
Everything
right?
was done by hand. Every, you know,
Acetate cells, painted,
production drawings, everything.
done by a big studio. How much of the artwork you do the? I know
I
you.
all I did was the character designs and the storyboards,
So they created the call it
the actual animation.
but all the artwork on the cells that wasn't they didn't take like your artwork and then trace it
They
onto
did.
a
They took my
cell.
artwork and translated it onto
Well, they
the.
translated it, but it wasn't like you didn't send them like the image of Shotgun
No,
Mary
I
going
didn't do
down
the
the
actual
street on the
animation.
motorcycle.
I didn't do the
Okay,
actual animation. I
okay,
all I did was the character designs and the storyboards.
okay. So if and that's all. That's and then the music was composed and performed by a professional musician, right?
Yes, and the sound effect.
And the sound effects. Okay.
Mhm.
So and that's why it cost $45,000, and then it had to be shipped over here too, right?
Yeah, that was easy. That was the easy part.
Right.
You
But that was
know.
before the internet. You couldn't
Yeah,
just
I
go.
got the master tape, and we did our.
So there was a tape. Okay.
We talk about if we had crowdfunding back then, we probably could have done a full pilot.
Oh yeah, sure. So so Stephen Reed is a professional animator, and he doesn't believe this, but I respect his skills as an animator and his knowledge of animation.
Hmm.
So he called me out and he said I think I kind of like casually said, oh, you probably do the same thing now for cheaper. And he's like, no, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, so I think maybe what he means is if you were to do the exact same thing with the exact same process, paint on acetate cells, paint on cells, professional studio using professional sound equipment, professional composer playing the music and copywriting the sound and all the. I think if you did that now, it probably would cost the same, if not more. But
Yeah,
because
if you go by today's dollars, we compare to 1995, it'd be well over north of $100,000.
right, but since Stephen Reed does the opening credits for a show called Mrs. Brown Boys in the UK on
Hmm.
his own home computer, if you were to provide him with enough artwork, and he were to use the animation software that he uses to animate those opening credits,
Yep.
I mean, neither one of us work in animation, but in our opinion, do you think it would cost a lot less than?
Yes, because you skip the ink and paint, because that was all done by hand.
Right.
Plus with the animation, you can definitely save time and money there because, you're not wasting acetate, you
Right, and you
know.
could provide him with like artwork that he could use
Yeah, yeah.
without
In the
having
hands,
to animate.
in the hands of a good, skilled digital animator, one
Like
guy,
Stephen Reed.
yeah, one guy can do the work of an army of 30 animators.
Right, and
Yeah.
you could probably get like stock sound effects from someplace, like a
Every
library.
every single animator that worked on that Warren Empire had to be paid. So that's why it cost so much.
Right, and then the just the music as well. I mean that was probably thousands of dollars right
Yeah,
there
it
for a minute
was.
of music.
The actual animation itself cost about 35,000, but then with the sound and Foley and everything, that cost additional 10, so
Right.
that's why.
So I mean, you could go to there's sound libraries now that make music for trailers that know, it's like okay, you got 90 seconds. We're gonna spend this many seconds doing the build up, and then the big epic epic music, and then the drop,
Yeah,
and then
I
the
would
bigger
also, I
music.
would venture to say that that same $45,000 probably could get us a 20-minute pilot now, you know.
Okay, so because neither one of us work in the animation industry, I will say that sounds plausible, but
Mhm.
we would have to ask Stephen Reed, who
Well,
works in the animation
it
industry.
depends on where you have it animated too,
Right.
like definitely to have it done in like India as opposed to Canada, it would be
Right.
different. It would be a big difference in price for sure.
Right. So let's see. Stephen Reed was the Flint Lockjaw was there.
Did Cynthia Rothrock win an Academy Award?
I do not know.
Wow,
Let's see.
she deserves one.
Retro Day says I'm going to correct his spelling. Reb Brown robbed of the Oscar for his Space Mutiny performance. So I'm trying to remember who.
He was also Captain America.
Oh, he was. Oh, well. Okay, so if you really want to get into it, I
He
believe
was. He was in the 90 version of Captain America.
he was in the two TV movies. If you want,
No,
Captain.
yes, he
Reb,
was the TV movies. You're right. You're right.
yeah, he was the two TV movies. Also, he went to my high school before I went there.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He really is a nice guy.
Yeah. Art and Times of James Ryan says, big fan of the Magic Crystal, righting wrongs, LOL. You know
Yeah,
what? I've still never seen the Magic Crystal. It
well,
was
we
it
should
was
do a watch party.
it was impossible to get your hands on like for years. But righting wrongs, I sent you that tape of.
He did.
So my righting wrongs story is I had I live in a predominantly, well, at the time it was getting to be Asian neighborhood. Now it's predominantly Asian neighborhood. So, so there was a Chinese video store, and I went in there, and they were like, "Oh, you're not Chinese," and I was like, whatever." So I said, "Hey, do you have any?" I threw it on their lap. I said, "Do you have a movie that has a lot of action in it?" And they were like, kind of like, I don't know. So the Righting Wrongs was the movie, and so I rented it totally random, just on their recommendation, and it was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. No subtitles even, and I just uh, dubbed. The statute of limitations has passed, so I copied all the fight scenes from that movie, and I sent you a clip reel, and everybody I sent it to was like, "Oh my God, who's this woman?" So I went back and I said, "What's that woman's name?" And they were like, "I don't know." They didn't know what
All I
her. They
remember is
couldn't say, like, they didn't know her American name.
all I
So
remember.
also, not to get too far into it, but they had a behind the curtain area, and that was the first place I discovered that there was hentai in the world. So
Oh, I knew about hentai for quite some time, to be honest.
so the Crooked Painter says, "Meh, Marvel movies are just quips and needle drops now."
Yeah, I mean, they can still turn things around. I believe, if they get back to the melodrama, that they used to have, and go back to being superheroes. I mean, just the classic superheroes, man. I mean, no, I think they can come back from that.
What?
To be honest,
So in addition to the quips and all the problems that they've been having,
that's
in
just
my
a
in
symptom of modern writing. To be honest,
well, in my opinion, two things are crippling the MCU. In my opinion, one is that when comics were first starting out and you were still discovering who the characters were, and there wasn't a lot of interaction between the characters from book to book. It was like Hulk was in the Hulk book, and you'd go issue after issue, and Hulk was the one amazing weird character, super character in the Hulk book. And then, like, after a year, it's like, and now he's going to meet Iron Man. Ooh, and that was like, oh my God. Now in every single Marvel book, there's like overwhelmingly the cast are all superpowered characters, and there's like two or three humans that you're supposed to relate to. But
Mhm.
and then that started to happen in the movies almost like right away, like right after Age of Ultron. They started, it was getting to be more heroes and heroes and more heroes and all that. The other thing is continuity, where it wasn't just like mostly one and done stories with like a through line. It's like you have to do your homework and know everything that happened everywhere to follow it. And then once Disney acquired 20th Century Fox and they introduced the multiverse thing, that's when that's the end of the MCU as far as I'm concerned. Because it's
Well,
because the multiverse thing it was a tool to have. It's like, oh, people like still like Golden Age whatever character. They still like the old version of this character, or they like this alternate version of this character. So we're gonna have it on Earth whatever, and Earth this and Earth that, blah 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 blah. And as long as they kind of like stayed in their own lane, that was fine. It's kind of like I can enjoy
Golden Age Batman.
Golden Age Batman in this comic that's just about Golden Age Batman or whatever. But once you start bringing them into the main thing, and once you start having storylines that require so much explanation that the average normie, their eyes start going off in other directions because they just completely lost interest.
Well, I'm of the belief that they don't care about continuity anymore. It
Well, I mean,
doesn't
they don't
matter
want
to
to do
them.
the homework, and I don't blame them.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them because first of all, people just aren't reading them anyway.
Right.
Second of all,
Oh, I mean the
it doesn't
movies.
matter as long as the IP is protected.
Yeah,
So
well, I mean, to me, all that continuity is like one of the worst things about superhero comics now.
yeah,
And
it
the fact
is.
that they brought that into the movie universe and played it so hard because they bought all these IPs and they want to put it to use. But like when I saw the Deadpool, frankly, I'll have to watch it again. But the first viewing of Deadpool versus Wolverine, I hated that movie. I hated that
Really, I
movie
loved it. I thought it
to
was.
the bottom of my bone. There was messaging in there that maybe I imagined it. I'll have to watch it again, but I Hate
Oh
it.
yeah,
And
there are
then there was,
plenty of
but
them
there
in
was
there.
other stuff, but like the that there was inner messaging that I really hated, but there was like this obvious messaging of the member berries. It's like, oh look, it's Wesley Snipes' Blade again.
Yeah.
Oh look, it's Jennifer Gardner's Electra again.
Well, for a
Did
fan, okay,
yeah,
it was pure, unadulterated, stupid fun. Okay,
okay.
and as
I
far as far as the because I'd seen so many MCU movies up to that point where I was so disappointed by them. You
yeah,
know, watching something that I could check my brain at the door, and just sit there for an hour and a half, and just watch crazy, stupid, over the top, crazy ass fun. I mean, it wasn't deep, as far as they was like it to me. It was an obvious cash grab, and I didn't mind that, to
mhm,
be honest. Because first of all, Deadpool had already set the ridiculousness of the whole concept, and having Wolverine in there in his yellow and you know uh, yellow costume to me was a huge bonus as a fan, and this was a love letter as far as I was concerned to fans,
yeah,
sort of like, oh yeah, we're sort of, and the thing about it is this, as far as I know, this movie had the least amount of studio interference, so it
mhm,
was able to just do whatever it wanted, and that was, yes, it's a forgettable movie. I'll grant you that it wasn't fantastic, and it wasn't deep, but it was fun. It's just one of those movies where, I tell you what, if it comes on, I usually watch it. Because
yeah.
it's just, you know, cruise fun. I mean, there's some cringe elements in there. Don't get me wrong, but overall, I thought it was fine. It was okay. It was
So
fun.
the so seeing it again isn't high on my priority list, but I would like to. But before I go into any kind of deep dive on it, I would really need to see it again to make sure that I think I saw what I think I saw, and to be able to pull up some actual examples of what I hated. But
Yes, I know.
he's Ben's echoing probably more because of the acoustics this time. But if you had seen the opening of the show with our new techno theme that Ben created live, I think we're gonna just
We're just gonna play along with it.
well, don't make him boomer again. Don't make him boomer with the sound again. But so anyway, the point with the Marvel thing is like, they spent all this money on all these IPs, and then this was kind of like another the whole thing was kind of like multiverse crap. And I was thinking, like, does anybody like the Jennifer Gardner Electra movie that much that they went, oh my God, it's Jennifer Gardner as Electra again. I'm so
Okay,
happy to see her in
all
the
right.
outfit.
I
All just
didn't mind
everything,
that, to be
huh?
honest. I thought it was. I didn't think it was. I didn't. Okay, I was surprised that she ended up in there. Okay, but I didn't mind that. Okay, I thought that there was a throwback to that you know that less than adequate movie, but it worked.
Yeah.
Okay, it
Okay.
worked. And I didn't mind the character being there. It was actually kind of cool because it the filmmakers were giving me something.
Right.
Okay. They were saying, hey, you remember this character?
Hmm.
Even though it was not in a great movie, we still, want you to, because it's just crazy and over the top and fun.
Hmm.
I didn't mind that, to be honest.
So now watch this fandom. Watch this fandom at large.
Sometimes,
Because
sometimes it's
I
not bad
understand.
to have fan service. Okay.
Because I respect your opinion, and because I understand where you're coming from, and there are parts of it I do agree with it. I will say I will. For now, we will mostly agree to disagree and just move on. Just because we've got a bunch of chats to
And
get to,
that's fine.
and see how that's done. Fandom grown-ups can talk like that. Art and
Bye,
Times of Jay
Artline.
Ryan said, but back then, bitter pills of politics were covered in a sweet, tasty, sugar-coated story that was actually enjoyable, and more often than not, wasn't preachy.
Well, it could be preachy. they were
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah.
they're definitely preachy comics, but for the most part, I think they understood their audience. I think
Yeah.
as the audience grew older, they wanted to appeal to that particular, uh, level of readership. You know,
Rarebit Fiend says it's just bad writing from bad writers. I think the internet is ruining people's ability to be creative. It's certainly distracting people.
I think it's not it's I think it's life experiences. People when we were growing up, we did shit. Okay, we went out and did things because we weren't stuck behind a TV or a computer screen. We
Hmm.
had to make our own fun. We had to experience live. We went to conventions. We met new friends. We discovered new things.
Yeah.
And that was part of the overall experience. And it is. I mean, it's just society becoming more and more tethered to our electronic media. I
I,
mean, it's just a fact of life.
yeah, I agree with that too. Because like, but well, also there's studies that are like, people are so distracted all the time because of their phones and whatnot that they don't have like any dream time. Can you like, if you were a write, if you like, what's someone like Gail Simone, for example, like she kind of became a meme in during the lockdowns from the some of the people who were doing like the comics YouTube stuff, and she was accused of being like a lazy writer. But I think like if you're on Twitter that much or X, and you're distracted and you're trying to write a script and like your ping is going off and it's like, oh, I had an idea, I better post it on X, blah 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 blah. There, it's like it's like you're writing what you're supposed to be writing for 5, 6, 7 hours or however long it takes, and then you're spending another 2 hours writing tweets and whatnot and it's like that's too much writing for somebody to be doing unless you're you know an old pulp writer who was just cranking out like a machine. Um, Back in the day, you'd be like waiting in line at the bank and you'd be like, hey, I'd suddenly have a really great idea. Or you're like on a log car trip with a friend, you just listen to the radio and it's like, you know what that song reminds me of? And then, you come up with a story or an idea or a feeling or whatever that way.
Well,
When I was waiting in line at San Diego, um, I just like, looking around at the nerds around me, and this guy came up with a bag full of movie props, and it was Philip Cable. And we struck up a conversation because I was approachable. I wasn't on any device or anything, and we became lifelong friends. So, I mean, that kind of stuff happens too.
well, it's fine to have nostalgia for that kind of thing, but that's not the way it is now.
That's
So
true.
we have to be aware that this society is changing.
Yeah, we're not going to
Whether
go
for
back.
whether it's better or for the worse, it's hard to say. Because we're not of the generation that's growing up with this stuff.
Right.
The thing about it is that how is that affecting the overall uh, fandom in particular? That's the thing is that um, it's almost like when you make a photocopy of something, the first one comes out pretty good, but if you make a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, it starts to dilute and the
Hmm.
resolution starts to go to crap. Same thing with if somebody was writing an IP that's 40 years old. At first the IP is the thing, and then somebody else comes in, writes a sequel, it's not too bad, and so
Hmm.
on and so on. And then it becomes diluted over time. People who are working on it they didn't grow up with it. The IP is older than the writer. Okay,
Yeah.
so they have no experience at all with the IP. It's nuance. The reason why it was created to begin with the thing it was trying to say. All they are ordered to do is take this IP, pick out the superficial elements of it and write it for a new audience.
Well, again, I understand the thinking behind that and how it could and should work. That it's like to whatever it is about this IP that speaks to you, bring out the nuance and bring out whatever resonance you have with it as a 20-year-old, however you relate to this 40-year-old property, you know, put yourself into it. But I don't think they're doing enough editorial off the back end to help them out and help them along.
Yes, you need a captain to steer the ship.
Right.
You
So
know,
if I as a 50 something year old person wanted to bring in a 20-year-old to help me on a project based on something that I grew up with when I was, if I brought in a 20-year-old to help me on Thundar the Barbarian project, and it's like, okay, go ahead and write it. Whatever Thundar means to you, make that happen.
see,
But then I would
then
have to come in and go like, okay, this is the part of Thundar. This is interesting. This is a new idea, but this is also the part of Thundar that needs to
well,
be in there to.
you're old enough to remember that thing. There used to be a thing called Story Bible, okay,
Yes.
where it was given to all the writers, and these were a list of do's and don'ts,
Right.
in crafting a story for this particular IP.
Right.
If I recall, I think Gene Roddenberry had, a very list of particular things he didn't want. Now, he wasn't rigid. He was willing to make some compromise, but it was at least a guide to
Sure.
read, for writers to look at in order to maintain, the integrity,
Right.
of the IP.
Right. Keep it smooth. They still have story Bibles. I mean, our friend Dean sent me a few of them for more contemporary
Yeah,
things.
I'm not saying they've gone away, but the thing is,
But
that
they're not they're not whatever they're doing for like the older IPs, they're not adhering to them very closely. So
yeah, apparently not.
so Joe says, I remember when you, Ben, took time off of Ninja High School to do the Marvel stuff, and Fred had to come in to fix what that fill-in guy did to the book. So I think he's talking about Hawaii.
No, no, he's talking about. I had taken a break,
Yeah,
and I had some people do some fill-in issues, and that was during the part where they were going hog wild over Ninja High School. And they did a lot of, which I didn't mind, to be honest. I like things to be different, but a lot of fans didn't like it.
are you
So
talking about the Hawaii issues, or are you talking about the stuff John Marshall did?
yes, the right after between issue 43 and issue 50, there was that.
The Hawaii stuff, right?
No, Hawaii came much later.
Oh,
you
okay.
know,
So
much
yeah, that
later.
was like the probably the John Marshall stuff.
Yeah, the early John Marshall stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry about that. He was more
No, I
fun
mean
than I
it's
told
fine. I
him.
mean, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have printed it. Okay, the
There
thing
was
is,
like so many in jokes on.
it was. I wanted him to take the. I'm not. The thing about Ninja High School is that it's one of those series that you can pretty much do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
Okay, and it works because Ninja High School, as long as you keep the core characters, you're free to do whatever you want. To be honest,
Hmm.
But Fred took it upon himself to correct,
Hmm.
things that he thought were, not Ninja High School. So I let him do whatever he wanted.
Well,
It'd be
I'll be
correct.
honest with you. This is the first time I've ever told this to you. So people in the chat do something else. I don't think I've ever read the Hawaii issues.
A lot of people seem
uh,
to like it. It's one of the probably the longest story arc in Ninja High School. It lasted for 24 issues, so it was definitely the longest. And a lot of people liked it.
it
Other
was
than
like the first true shojo thing done in the states, and
yeah, I have to say they wrapped it up pretty well, in my opinion.
the shojo wasn't a thing. Like your audience was more of a shonen kind of fandom, but the like if you did shojo now, that's what's hot. So Rarebit Fiend says, oh, he's talking to the Art and Times of J. Ryan. Creativity is a mental muscle. It must be built up or left to atrophy.
Yeah, well, coming up with new ideas is really hard, especially if you're on a schedule.
So
You know,
Joe
that's
says writers are network. I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I agree with him.
Joe says writers are networked and often publication slash jobs are based on who you know and not what you can do.
That's I have to disagree a little bit on that. It depends. The bigger the company is, the it's more of a who you know thing. The smaller the company is, it's based on your ability. You know, I am not. I'm very, loose when it comes to new submissions.
The Art and Times of Jay Ryan, the weeding out process works to build that muscle. They are the ones that get through the strength of will to get better. The people who put in the work will always find a way.
Yes, that's true. Work is the most important thing. You know, if you don't do it, it's pointless. You know,
So Crooked Painter says the Drew Karpysh Old Republic books were peak Star Wars novels. I'll take your word on that. I've read some of the Star Wars novels and they were fine, but they were never. They were like okay science fiction novels with the Star
like the
Wars
Star Trek
characters.
novel.
Yeah, well, no, Star Trek I think works better as a novel than Star Wars does, unless you're a really good action writer. So, and most of the Star Wars novels, like, yeah, there's some action in, but like it, you watch the each of the Star Wars movies, all the George Lucas Star Wars movies had stuff in them, whether you like the prequels or not. All of them had things you had never seen in a movie before until George Lucas said, "Screw it, I'm going to take my FU money and make it happen." And
Well, when you have that kind of money, you can do that.
yeah, but then well, and that drive, but then the other stuff, just the novels and the comics, just kind of like carried that along for a while until like George Lucas did it again. So, oh, so Rabbit Fiend says, sure, but what you said was that people aren't actually creative, and I strongly disagree with that.
Did
Hence,
I say that? I didn't say that.
no, I think he was talking to somebody.
Uh,
The Art and Times of Jay Ryan, I think most people have ideas, Rarebit Fiends, but few will have the will to persevere and make them real.
well, there are people who have I singular ideas, you know, and there are people who are inspired, you know, by other people's ideas.
Yeah,
You know, George Lucas, he wasn't the first to make, you know, a science fiction, fantasy, space opera,
yeah.
but, you know, he was inspired by it and he created his own thing. I
Hmm.
mean, you think J.K. Rowling is the first person to write a story about a magical kid who finds his destiny, you know, the so-called chosen one. She's not the first, you know, but she did something with that idea and made something her own, you
And
know.
she did it like the fanciest way too. I mean, there were when that came out, there were people saying like, "Oh, she was ripping off X, Y." I forgot the books that supposedly she ripped off.
The Books of Magic by Neil Gaiman.
Actually, I think the books of magic were considered a ripoff of her. But
No, that
there,
came out before Harry Potter.
oh, did it? There
Hmm.
was also a story in 2000 AD that was kind of like, okay, it's a kid who learns magic, whatever. But I mean, that's just kind of a trope. So who knows who actually read what? But um,
But
it
she did
was
it successfully. See, that's the thing.
she wrote a story that got published by the biggest kids publisher in America. That I mean, it was already successful in the UK, but then when it was called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and then when it was published in the States, Scholastic's the biggest kids publisher, and it was certainly good, and it was good enough to carry it to success.
Well, my
So
my my understanding is that it was originally not going to be published at all by them. It
yeah,
was the
they
editor
didn't
who
want
took
it
it
at first.
home. Huh?
They didn't want it at first. It was I think it was
Yeah.
the imprint. There's an imprint Arthur Levine that's like in
Well,
Scholastic.
the story I heard was that one of the editors took it home, and her daughter read it and loved it, and that
Yeah,
convinced her to actually pick it up.
yeah. There's a similar story about there was a young adult series called Aragon that they made a movie that wasn't very good. It was written
Artists.
by written and self-published by this teenage guy, and then like it fell into the hands of some editor at a major publisher, and he loved it, and it became like a huge publishing success story. So
Yeah, I mean the thing
um,
is, you don't know what's going to be big. You know, you
you
just have to
don't.
take a chance,
It's a
and sometimes
crapshoot,
things hit, and sometimes things don't. You know, it just a matter how it connects to the reader. You
and
know,
sometimes quality isn't the primary factor. So
well, it doesn't
Rarebit
hurt.
Fiends says, actually, that is not a direct quote. I should not have included quotes around that. Sorry. Rabbit Fiend
Okay,
says,
we
sure,
forgive
art is
you.
1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Uh,
Exactly.
James Ryan, Jay Ryan agrees exactly. And then Jay Ryan says, artists are the worst, LOL, said as an artist, LOL. The thing is, okay, so the thing is too, like when I was kind of crapping on artists, you know, the indie level is where you learn whether you can do it, who can do it, who's got the chops, and who probably shouldn't be here. So most of the artists that I kind of crapped on last week, they're not they never ended up working like in comics in a meaningful way after the experience I had with them. One guy ended up working for Rock and Roll Comics, and he ended up being one of the many people who got screwed by them. And one guy went on to work for Eternity Comics, and then after his run with them ended, I don't think he's doing comics anymore, and he didn't have to because he was a cop. He had a day job, and he just could fall on, end up doing that, or he died. I don't know. So, but anyway, it's like this is
That's kind of grim.
the first guy that did we did a Planet Comics ran my guinea pig story, The Cavaliers, and that the artist who did that was like after 3 or 4 artists, I put money on the table and I told them all like, hey, could you do this guinea pig story? And for whatever reason, they were too busy or didn't want to draw guinea pigs or just whatever it took. And one guy was a coworker who actually went to art school and spent a lot of money. And he was a very talented artist, but when it came time to actually do something for publication, he just flamed out. He overthought it and flamed out and couldn't get it done. So I had to find other people. But anyway,
Well,
the
back then it was a lot harder.
well,
Uh,
no, the guinea pig story was very recently. It was like the
I
last
know,
two
but
years.
now if you need to find an artist, you can easily find one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Easily.
you could find someone probably on a slightly more professional tier on Fiverr, but oh my
You can
God, how long does that
you
take?
can find an artist in Belize who will do it for pennies.
Right. Yeah, you've acquired a network of artists that was completely inaccessible to you in the
Yeah,
90s.
well, the thing is, it's different for everything. I mean, I look for people who can work within my budget, within my time frame, and who have a professional attitude.
Yeah.
I'm not forcing anybody to draw anything, okay, but I do have uh, limited resources, and I have to be careful how I use those resources, and try to find a balance between someone who is willing to stay within those parameters, and still produce the material.
Right. And also, so if you have limited resources like me and you, when an artist flames out on you, you have to either go back from the beginning and get somebody to redraw all those pages. If you're going to go with whatever the new artist is, either do you go back to the beginning and have them redraw all those pages and go through that expense, or you just have them pick it up where the other artist left
That's
off and
just
go
the
with the
nature of the
Frankenstein
business.
monster.
That's the nature of the business, Steve.
I know.
If you're a publisher, then you have to deal with that. Now, if you're just a single creator, okay, that's totally different.
Right.
If you can draw, then you can overcome that problem.
Right.
You know?
Which goes back to, what I was saying before too. Like you, Fred, pretty much everybody I see on the AP Zoom chat, you, Fred Perry, Joe White, David Hutchinson, Alfred, um, they all can write, they can draw, they can letter, they can color, they can ink. You guys could produce a comic from beginning to end. It's just a question of, do you want to go through that much work and effort, and do you have the time to do it? Somebody like me, it's like my I begin and end with the writing and maybe a little bit of editing and maybe some very rudimentary lettering, and that's all I can do. So if somebody flames out on me, my hands are tied until I can find somebody to pick up the baton. So Flintlock, Stephen Reed said, "Oh, let me go back to Joe. The biggest problem with independent projects isn't money, a very close second. It is wrangling members of a project. Cats on speed are easier. True. One person can sync a project. True. What do
Well,
you think?"
I have to disagree with Joe. I think money is the most important thing. If you don't have the money, then you really can't do anything. unless you're doing it yourself. If you're doing it
Right.
yourself, then you have much better control over how something is produced. But I think the number one aspect is money. If you can't pay somebody to do something, then chances are they're not going to do it. You know,
Well,
That's-
if you have the money and you budget the project and you raise the money on Kickstarter or whatever, this is like assuming you do what Kickstarter was made for. You don't start the project until you have the money for it. You
that was
budget
what
the
it used to
money,
be.
you raise the funds, you start the project, and then the artist decides, his girlfriend's cat gets sick, and then the inker decides he's got to go, he's going to go back to night
more,
school, and
more
da 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 da.
likely, more
Yeah,
likely, the person who created the project spends the money on bills.
there's that too. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you can't be tempted to do that. If you're going to do a project, okay, you have to run it like a business. You can't use your crowdfunding money to pay your bills, your everyday bills.
Exactly.
You're obligated to finish the project.
Stay
You know,
away from the Indian casino. Lockjaw says both Hulk movies underperformed but made money. To be sure, to be sure. That's actually true, Ben. He is right.
oh, I'm not saying it didn't make money. I'm just saying it didn't do as well, as they were expecting. You
Well,
know,
technic, he's going to hit you on the technicality. Technically, you said one of them was a huge flop, but
well, I mean, in my eyes, it was a huge flop because otherwise they would have done a sequel, and they didn't, and plus
yeah,
you haven't done a new Hulk movie since the second one came out, I
they did
mean,
the
why
smart
would
thing. They did the smart thing. They reestablished the character for the MCU. They put MCU stuff in that second one,
yeah, but
and
they
then put
didn't
him.
do its own standalone movie. And to
No,
my
but
eyes, if it was any modicum of a success, they would have greenlighted a third movie,
yeah,
and they
but
didn't.
they put a pin in it and brought him in like a bunch of movies afterwards, and it's been fine.
Ah,
Uh,
we can agree to disagree.
that's fine. There's Flint Lockjaw stirring up shit like he does. Uh, I love him. He's my brother from another mother. Okay, so okay. If he's still listening, I'm going to tell a story, a Flint Lockjaw story. But this totally relates to what we do. So as you know, I've said it before. I do another podcast called "Everything Comes Back to 2000 AD." You know how they have Batman Day or had Bat? Are they still doing Batman Day? Do you know? Okay,
I never heard of
you've heard of
Batman Day.
Batman Day, right? Everybody's heard of Batman Day,
Not me. I haven't heard of Batman Day.
right?
What is this Batman Day you speak of?
Well, it was a initiative like to promote Batman. My bookstore of all things
When
did
is
a.
Batman Day?
It was like in fall sometime. My bookstore did a Batman Day. DC Comics came to the managers and said we could have Jim Lee and I forgot who else.
Holy
Um,
crap! Really?
yeah, and we
Wow.
went for it, and it was a zoo, and so we had like cosplayers and Jim Lee um, and then we never saw any of those customers again because there was like no loyalty. Anyway, so I do the everything comes back to 2000 AD podcast. So Rebellion, the publisher that publishes 2000 AD and Judge Dredd, got jealous apparently, and they wanted to do something called Day of Dread, and they wanted to make like a hashtag and an at da 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 da. So we were like, well, what is that even going to entail? And so they were doing signings that, like, if a creator lived in a certain part of England or the UK, they would have them go to a comic store and do a signing, and that was kind of it. It was pretty lame. And then they would send like marketing materials to the store to help out with the Day of Dread initiative. And so we thought, well, that sounds kind of lame. So Flint Lockjaw, Stephen Reed, and my co-host John Burtis, they decided to start their own thing. So you've heard of Inktober, right?
I have heard of that.
Okay, so on the back of Inktober, Judge Dredd, because it's set in the future and it was originally a kids comic book, came up with like futuristic swear words to replace, like Drock was essentially the F word and Grud was God. So they would say Grud damn it, or I can't think of some of the others, but you get the idea. So they said for October they're going to call it Drocktober, and they're going to make it all every day. Judge Dredd fans could submit Dredd art fan art to their web. They created a fan page on Facebook called Drocktober, and the guys who Flint and John with some there's like 6 2000 AD groups on Facebook, so you would just flood the groups with fan art during the month of October, and they came up with prompts for every day. So it'd be like Judge Dredd versus your favorite DC character, Judge Dredd versus your favorite Marvel character, gender swap a 2000 AD character, blah 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 blah. All like every these guys did the work and came up with 30 prompts for people to follow, and some of the fans came up with some of the funniest shit and some of the most creative shit. Not all of the artwork was great, but we got some pretty good artists. We discovered a guy named Andrew Sawyers who was a he did something every single day, and he ended up his artwork was fantastic, and he ended up being picked up by a indie publisher in the UK called the 77. Just people loved it and had a lot of fun.
Well,
Here's the $1,000,000 question. Did Rebellion support it at all? Did Rebellion, the publisher of 2000 AD, and Judge Dredd mention on any of their email newsletters, on their Facebook page, any place where Rebellion and Judge Dredd stuff could be officially found by the publisher itself? Did they mention, hey, there's this fan thing, you want to join in? It's a lot of fun. Did they ever say that?
Did they?
No, absolutely not. They don't like us. They don't like our podcast because sometimes we shit on stories we don't like, and we will criticize creators who we feel are doing pretty lazy work. I try to be fair. Sometimes Stephen Reed or Flint or John, we've all at times said things that might come across as a little bit harsh, but we love 2000 AD. We want to see it be its absolute best all of the time, and if we notice like a trend that keeps like makes it seem like it's getting worse and worse, we'll call it out. Another thing they did was let me ask you in the chat, does the word regened mean anything to you?
Mm-mm.
Okay, you've heard of Rogue Trooper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happened? Rogue Trooper is a clone, and so when one of the Rogue Troop, well, one of the okay, so the oh god, this is so long. The Rogue Trooper, the blue soldiers are called genetic infantrymen, GIs. So they're
Oh, how clever.
this 2000 AD is full of that stuff. So the genetic infantrymen have these biochips in their weapons and equipment that if they die, their memories can go onto these little chips, and then they can take these chips, which basically look like microscope slides, and they can put them in a cloning
Another
thing.
road trooper.
Right, and they can regene a new rogue trooper based on that information.
Saves on training.
Saves on training. So they nothing goes to waste. So 2000 AD noticed that Rebellion 2000 AD noticed that their readership was just a bunch of old farts like us in their 50s. And all of a sudden, like this was just like a few years ago, after decades of just catering to an aging fan group, they realized, shit, we don't have anybody like young up and coming who are fans of our stuff. So they did a thing called the regened issues, which was they took exactly what we've been talking about, old IPs, 50-year IPs at the time that were pushing like 45 years, 45 years old. They took their character, and it's an anthology book, so they can have things come and go, right? It's like Judge Dredd's permanent, but they'll do 4 other stories, and one will end, and another one will begin, and they kind of shell game it around that way. So the regene issues were like kind of a reboot, and they did like young Judge Dredd as a cadet, and the young soldiers from the genetic infantrymen rogue trooper universe, and young strontium dog, and they were aimed at young readers, and then they had characters that they made up for this, and it was supposed to be an all ages thing, but it was pretty kidified. They had a character who was basically like Space Mary Poppins.
Did it work?
No. they s- what they were using the regular. So this is, and so fans were going like, hey, I don't want to buy a kitty comic. I want to buy 2000 AD. And they were like, well, you don't have to buy each of those issues, knowing full well the fan mentality is you don't want to break up your run. Like you're not gonna buy like issue 599, 601 because issue 600 is a kitty issue, right? You're gonna buy 600 no matter what.
Right.
So and also like if you had a subscription, you're gonna get the kitty issue in with your regular run of adult material, or not a not kitty material.
Right.
So so again, it wasn't like an attack on the fans, but it was just sort of like we're going to take advantage of the fans because we know that they're going to buy these kitty issues no matter what we put in it. And then they would take that kitty material and repurpose it as graphic novels and sell them as children's graphic novels. Did those sell? Not in my store. And you would think that I, of all people, would support it. But no, they were terrible. And Alex DeCampi wrote one of them, and it was one of the worst things 2000 AD ever published. And not just me, who personally don't like Alex DeCampi, but people just based on the quality of the work itself did not like this story, but they kept it going because they kept wanting to. They thought, oh well, once we have enough of these, then it'll be like an IP.
Right.
I think they saw it as something they could market as a movie or TV show or evolve off into something else as well. So so they did not support October. They did not support even if they took us out of the equation, take everything, take our podcast out of the equation, and just thank all the fans who contributed something to this, just fan art, fan art, fan art for a month. They didn't. They just did not acknowledge that. So yeah, Rebellion's just been, and then there's stories that they've got going that they keep bringing back and bringing back. There was one called Skip Tracer that was basically a black guy version of Blade Runner, and they kept bringing it back, bringing it back. Nobody liked it. A couple of, I think, okay, nobody's a broad term. Not very many people liked it. Overwhelmingly, it was kind of like, stop bringing this back. And it's like, hey, we got part 5 coming. And it was like, dude, and part 5 means not just one part 5 episode. It was like, this is going to go on for 9 weeks, part 5. 9 weeks of this crap. So, I mean, they don't listen to their fans. They don't seem to care. And,
Well, see, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, the thing is that it's not exactly these corporations are encouraging the fans. They only care about the fans so much they buy stuff.
Right.
Okay, so they're just right to them. They're not fans, so much they're just consumers. Okay,
Right.
And that's the mistake I think that happened with Star Wars with under Kathleen Kennedy. Now, don't get me wrong, she's somebody who's been around, blocked a few times, but when she says stuff like, none of the extended universe is canon, you're after a new audience. It's
Right.
just like it's like spitting in the face of the old fans. You can't walk a delicate balance between pleasing the old fans and attracting new fans. You just have to get somebody who's talented and who knows what the IP is all about.
Mhm.
It would have been so easy to make Star Wars pleasing to not only the old fans, but create a new generation of new fans. And,
If the new stuff had been good, I think people could have lived with the pocket universe of the
oh, well,
original
don't get
stuff.
me wrong that there's probably fans of the new stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, it just wasn't enough.
No.
Okay, and whether or not that translates later on as fans 10 years from now, okay, remains to be seen. Who
Right.
knows? Maybe 10 years from now, people will have a huge, nostalgic feeling for the sequel trilogies. I highly doubt it, but I could be wrong, So
So
the thing
American
is,
Discord.
don't spit on the faces of your fans. That's the worst thing you can do. you can you can uh, attract new readers or new fans to your IP, just not at the expense of the old fans.
Right. So let me. The American Discord says I disagree about continuity. There was always callbacks to previous events for relevance to current storylines in the MCU books for new readers to get the gist. Current books have abandoned it all. So
Well, continuity.
continuity is fine. It's just when you have to do your homework to understand everything that's going on
Well,
now.
look at continuity as a piece of luggage. Okay, you
Hmm.
put in little things in at a time. At first, it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but eventually, it fills the whole luggage and it becomes too heavy to lift.
Right.
Okay, when you rely too much on continuity, then it becomes burdensome and heavy,
Hmm.
and it's hard to keep up with what's going on. And that's what I mean by continuity is you can do continuity, but don't let it be the be all to end all.
Right.
Okay, the trick is to keep the characters, okay, moving in a consistent direction.
Right.
There's a reason why every 10 years or so I change the cast on Ninja High School. Okay,
Hmm.
because I can't expect the people who grew up with the original cast, okay, 20 years from now to identify to accept the idea that they're still teenagers. Okay, they can't. The world has changed. People have changed. So what I do is I organically introduce new characters in the old series. So when the time comes, these characters can take over the old series, create a new continuity on their own.
Right.
You know.
Well, that was one of the things I was sorry about that because I was gonna do like the current storyline. I was gonna do it, and I had like tons of notes and plans and everything. And
No, I think you did
COVID.
just fine. I think that I think what the thing was is that um, I think you had a big vision, okay, of the story, and it was hard for you to break it down into little stories.
Oh no
You
no
know,
no! I had. I'm talking about Ninja High School. I had uh I had all of that. It's just that I didn't get it down on paper fast enough, and Jim
yeah,
Felker ended
you
up
were.
doing it, which is the story of my life. I That's me.
That's fine. We were able to adapt. Okay, that's the
You
beauty of
got
it.
Jim Felker to do it, but Jim Felker did so many deep dives. I was like, I know Ninja High School lore, and I don't even know what the hell
Well,
you're
you
talking
laid the
about.
foundation, and that was the important thing. Okay, the
Yeah,
foundation was solid. Okay,
yeah.
you laid the foundation. You let others build upon it, and we were able to take it to a point where it came to a satisfying conclusion.
It
You know,
stabilized under Alfred
it
doing it.
the only thing that I thought was um, a weak point was that I was wanting to focus on the new characters
Yeah.
and not so much on the old
Well,
characters.
that was the thing. I
Yeah.
didn't want to bring out those old characters at all. Like I was
Right.
gonna,
It should have
because
all
I
just
was
about the
gonna
new
make that
characters.
if we were gonna do anything with the old characters, they would be backup stories.
Right. But that the problem was is that there was too big a cast.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jim was
It should have
bringing
been
in
start
like
off with
characters, and I'm like, I
the
don't
original.
know who is this
But
guy.
that's fine. It would recover from that.
Yeah,
Now we're just focusing on the regular characters, and that's
right.
fine. And the good thing about the, the beauty of a book like Ninja High School is it doesn't matter.
That's
Okay,
true. Yeah,
since it's episodic, we can just do new stories with the new characters until it's time for us to move on.
nice.
Like my plan is to get to 250 with these new characters and switch them up again.
Okay.
So I'm building up little things in there. Okay, that so what I may do is at issue 250, I may go back to Quagmire and
Hmm.
do characters that what happened to them during the events of V3. You know, so but the idea, but the thing is that I don't destroy past continuity. All the characters are still there.
Hmm.
Okay, people can still do characters based on either V1, V2, or V3. No matter what, and it still works.
Right.
With the continuity of the story. You
Right.
know,
But I think like when it comes to fantastic stories and normies and having a big enough audience to sustain it, sometimes you have to dial it back and just sort of like introduce one thing at a time instead of like, well, who the hell's that guy kind of thing. It's like, oh, well, didn't you see
yes,
that TV series?
that's the biggest mistake a lot of superhero universes are. Okay, they
Hmm.
start off too big.
Yeah.
Okay, they have all these big characters, all these different characters, but you can only focus so much time on each one.
Yeah.
That's instead of building. When Marvel and DC first started in the 1930s and 40s, did they have 15 different new characters all at once? No, they had
Right.
Superman.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they had Batman. Then they had
Right.
one at a
Right.
time. You
Right.
know.
And people want to see who they are and what they do played out. And like
Right.
when like you saw what Iron Man was and his story and what he can do and what his character like is like played out in the first movie and the second movie before you even got him teamed up with everybody else in the Avengers. Same thing with every character they meticulously put into place for the
Yes,
Avengers.
you have to
But
get people invested in their character.
and because that's what the Marvel comics did too before they brought them all together in one team. But
Hmm.
these comic book universes that just start with issue number one, like even the Image stuff too. It's like, okay, here's the character name, here's them pose. They're posing all together. There's captions all around with the characters' names and little description like file. It's like here's their military file of what they can do and their past. Da, 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 da. I can't keep track of that, and I don't care to. So it's like, and it's like here we're going to move him in
And well,
action.
it
I
depends on whether it's something you love.
I will say this. I don't know if he's still with us, but that Cryptid Core book started off with a bang. I kind of knew what the characters would have been like because they're based on cryptids, so I kind of know what a Bigfoot is. I kind of know what a Mothman is. Blah blah
Right,
blah
you
blah.
had a good starting point.
Right. They were based on something I kind of knew what it was enough to get me through the action packed first issue, and then the second issue slows way the hell down, and you get to see each character in their own environment with their own little bugaboos and what they're going to be fighting for, and what little who's got a secret and all this other kind of stuff. And that's the quieter second issue. But I wasn't bored, and I'm ready for more action in the next issue or whatever comes on ahead. So
Yeah, well, if you're going to do an
that's how
ensemble
to do
cast,
it.
if you're going to do an ensemble cast of any type, you need to limit it to like no more than three or four.
Right,
I mean, anything more than that, you're going to overload.
right.
The
And
story.
and even something like Shaman Kane. I mean, like the first three short stories are how he teamed up with the cast that's going to be his
Yeah, well, he's a singular
supporting cast.
character.
Yeah,
Also, there's a difference between a creator-driven project as opposed to a corporate-driven
right,
project. Okay, a corporate-driven project has no vision; it just has the product, and it just needs something to come out that they can make money on. A creator-driven project has the creator, and he's the one who drives the project. Like, there's a difference between a project like Star Wars and Star Trek and something like Harry Potter. Okay, J.K. Rowling is Harry Potter.
right.
Okay, nobody else can do Harry Potter except J.K. Rowling. Star Wars and Star Trek are owned by Disney and Paramount,
Hmm.
and they decide what gets made and what doesn't.
Right. But I'm saying like with there's a lot of there. There feels like there's a lot of, especially if you look at Kablam, there are a lot of new superhero teams that are coming out, all the time.
Yeah,
And
now they're still around. Very few. AC Comics with Fed Force, one of the very few still around.
hmm yeah,
And
but again, their continuity goes way back, but they don't they kind of dip into it. They mention it, but it's not super dependent on
well, but they know
what's
their
going on.
audience too. That's the thing. They know who they're catering to.
Right,
They know who's buying the book.
right.
And they stay with that formula, and it works.
But like
It works.
with Cryptid Core versus like a lot of the new ones I've seen, they're taking the time to lay the groundwork, and then a lot of the new ones it's just kind of like you know, the entire cast is like superhero characters just standing around talking or fighting, and it's like, you know,
Yeah,
so
yeah. The superhero writing is not the same we grew up with.
it's not what it used to, what it
So,
used to be.
so Joe,
Except Encrypted Core, which everybody here should buy.
we,
Joe says, I think some IPs need to just rest for a few years before a new project is launched. Look at novels. Writer can go a couple of years between books and still have a huge dedicated fandom.
well, I agree somewhat and disagree with someone. I think some IPs are better left untouched. You know, if I never saw another, you know, what the never if I never saw the Buckaroo Banzai movie, I'd be perfectly happy with that.
Mm.
You know, there's
Especially
no reason for me to see another Buckaroo Banzai movie. Okay, the first one was fine. I don't really, you know, and sometimes it's better just appreciate a piece of art as for what it is. Leave it alone. Don't.
I love Buckaroo Banzai, but that movie is so freaking weird. There was no way that thing was ever going to make money. I mean,
Well,
this,
you can't predict that.
well, the
You know?
character. So the lore is that there was actually a bunch of Buckaroo Banzai scripts written, and they picked like the middle one. So this was that's why in the movie they're like mentioning things that you're like, when the hell did that happen? And so if you get the DVD or the Blu-ray, they have a feature where there's like a scroll at the bottom of the screen, like a running commentary that you can read. And like when they just throw something out there in the dialogue, it explains like what the storyline for what script that would have been a reference to. So
Yeah, we see
but and
the
nobody wants to. I mean, I'm anal enough that I would have wanted to do that because I love the property. But like most normies are going to go like, I don't know what the hell.
yes. This thing is, if there's no reason to do anything unless you have something to say.
Right.
Okay, you know, if you have a brilliant Buckaroo Banzai sequel story, you know, and it's fantastic, then yes, I'd be willing to justify doing a sequel. But until that happens, there's no reason for it to even, you know, come to fruition. You know, sometimes I think they just do these kind of reboots and remakes just for money. That's it. You know, just product. It's all about product.
Well, the other thing too is when the big problem, the elephant in the room project that they're only just starting to talk about is a lot of the people who are the actors in these projects, these IPs, they're too old. It's like I don't want to see 80-year-old King Conan. I so I don't want to see
Is this movie or comic talk? It's a little bit of both.
no, yeah, well, okay.
They're sort of connected in a way, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
We're both it's both about creative endeavors.
I think well, we're talking about fandoms in general, so that includes movies,
Yeah.
comics, old time radio. Uh, all right, so Joe says expectations can ruin a film for you. I went into the first Transformers film. Are you talking about the animated movie or the Michael Bay film? I went
I'm
into
sure
the
he's
first
talking about Michael Bay.
first Transformers film with expectations of G1 in my head. I walked out when they revealed Optimus's mouth. The flame job was also annoying. American Discord, I get it, I'm just kidding. I find no joy in Marvel film. Edward Norton Hulk, GOTG 1 and 2, and maybe the first two Iron Man movies get a rewatch in my home. The rest can find their way to the furnace. I thought Captain America, I thought the two Captain American movies were good. I liked Civil War. I like the Avengers.
Okay, well, American discourse is let's get back to comics in a way. Okay, so so DC seems to be killing it with this absolute Batman, I mean absolute line, you know, and I wonder if that's actually more in service to the fans or is it more in service to speculators, you
Mm,
know, and retailers.
yeah.
You know, it's I've had people say that it's good, it's a good read.
Hmm.
Okay. But is it Batman?
Yeah.
Okay. The thing is that I've actually read one or two issues and I come away saying this is Batman in name only. Okay. if you had put a label on that comic book that wasn't named Batman, would it have achieved that kind of success? You know, it's I think it's relying strictly on the Batman name, and is that in service of the fans? Okay, do fans of Batman actually look at this and say, yes, that is the Batman that I know?
Hmm.
Okay, I don't, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, as a fan of Batman, this is not the Batman that I know. Okay, Batman would never do the kind of things that absolute Batman would do. Never.
Hmm.
Okay, he has a code that makes him who he is. And this is another thing about uh, you know corporate entertainment companies, who have uh, no deference to the fans at all. They just creating product. And
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, Absolute Batman is just product. People are saying, okay, I did think that recently where I said Absolute Batman is not going to last. And I stand by that. I give it 3, 4 more years, and we'll see where it is. You think
Hmm.
it's still going to be as popular? You think it's still going to be as valuable in 5 years as it is now? Will people remember this Batman as the definitive Batman?
Hmm.
I don't think so.
No.
I really don't. I stand by that. Yeah. And the thing about Marvel, from what I understand, is a lost cause. It's almost as if Marvel doesn't even care anymore. They're
No.
just putting out product.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last, Marvel comic that really made any impact at all. I mean, and again, it's about abandoning the fans. When you abandon the fans, then they're not going to support you. Yeah, it's
They
just
should have.
whether it's movies or comics.
They should have kept certain titles like sacred. Like Amazing Spider-Man is the same Spider-Man. It's like even though the backgrounds change and the technology changes and all that, the character is the same Spider-Man you grew up with when you were a kid. Same thing
Well, the
with
thing
like.
is, okay, all right, I don't mind change. Okay,
Mhm.
the thing is, that now we have a Spider-Man family, just like we have a Batman family. Okay, now, if Marvel had thought about it just for a minute, they could have started introducing elements that could have been our organic continuation of Spider-Man.
Mhm.
Okay, you know, they I hear that one of the worst things they did was unmarry Peter Parker and Mary Jane. You
Mhm.
know, I don't know if that's a good decision or bad, but apparently a lot of the fans didn't like that decision.
Right.
Okay, because they could have taken that, and made an organic transition to a new set of characters that could have brought in a new generation of readers. You
Right.
know,
So one of the strengths of 2000 AD, and because it's an anthology, again they can shell game things around to suit themselves, is that for the most part the creators of the series are the ones who stick with it from beginning from for very long runs, except for Judge Dredd. They've brought in like different writers have written Judge Dredd, and right now especially the writers write Judge Dredd very different. One writer writes very differently from another writer. Um, but like the guy like a character. Are you familiar with Strontium Dog?
mhm.
So like Strontium Dog, it was mostly two or three. There was a span where Garth Ennis actually took it over in the middle, but the beginning and the end of it were like one of two or three writers, and they brought the original creator, the artist who was one of the original creators, back towards the last few episodes. So there's kind of like a small pool of talent that kind of shepherds the whole story, across. And the story, the story is just like a lot of incidents, short stories, one and dones, longer stories, but it's not like we've got this one long epic Tolkien length story we're going to tell that has a beginning and a plotted out ending, and we're going to take it there. It's just this is the character's life, like Conan. It's a short stories, longer stories, novel length stories that tell the story of this character. Um, but it's not like Marvel where they just like there's like 5 books that
Yeah,
month, five
that's the
different
thing.
writers, 5 different artists.
And that's the
Somehow
thing.
it all has
I
to
don't,
fit
I don't,
together.
I don't have any idea where to even start. If I was a new reader, okay, I wouldn't even know where to begin, which title, what I picked. For There's like 5 different Spider-Mans. There are different versions of Thor, different versions of Captain Marvel, different versions of this, that, and the other. When I was, back in the day, back in my day, there was like one X-Men title, one Spider-Man title, one Daredevil title. You could keep up with that, and that was fine, but I mean, I'm a fan of Marvel. Don't get me wrong. I love old Marvel. Okay. I love old, DC. I was never really a big fan of DC, but I've grown to appreciate, the
Yeah.
universe. And I look, but Marvel was my game. What lost me was when um, they started to veer away from with doing too many titles and not knowing which title to collect.
Right.
When they started doing 5 different X-Men titles, 3 different, 17 different Spider-Man titles, I don't know what I should collect.
Right.
Now if they were like $1 a piece, I could invest, in some of those titles, but they're a major purchase now. They're $5 each,
Yeah.
and they're not knowing where to even begin, whether or not these stories are going to be any good. It's too much of a risk, you know.
Which brings back to like why manga's kicking American comics asses because there's one Chainsaw Man.
Mhm.
You read there might be like 30 volumes at $10 each, but there's one Chainsaw Man, and that one Chainsaw Man starts with Chainsaw Man number 1 and ends with whatever volume the series ends at. There's like I don't know how many hundred volumes of One Piece, but it's not only is it One Piece. Well, actually, there's spin-off series now that it's so popular in the States. They've done like little
Yeah,
side
but they were
stories with
their
different
own
characters.
thing. They're
You
their
can
own.
ignore all those side
Right,
stories.
you can ignore
If
all
you
those sides.
just want the One Piece story, you start with the first One Piece and you end with the last One Piece. And on top of everything else, it's all done by the same guy and whatever assembly line of artists he has doing the way they create manga. So I if this they will never do this, but if they wanted to save themselves, and I don't think they want to enough to do something like this, Marvel and DC would have to go scorched earth. Just have like a flat dead month where there's nothing. Start off with a new number 1 with a retelling of the origin story and make it very clear that this Spider-Man is for 8, 9, 10 year olds. This Spider-Man is a young adult series that's going to be mostly romance, and this Spider-Man is for adults. And just go with the key. Forget about giving Gamora her own series. Forget about the. They just came up with the guy who did created
I
Guardians of
think
the
it's too
Galaxy
late.
came up
I
with
think
the
it's too late.
Imperial
I think
Guardians. I don't even know. It's like the Imperial Guard from the Shi'ar. And I'm like, I don't even remember who half those characters are, and I don't want to read a Guardians comic where with them in it. Even if he's writing it and I like him.
Well,
So
I think it's too late, to be honest. I think
yeah,
that even if they do that, it wouldn't help them. Okay, because then they'd just be back in the same situation again. I believe if they really want to do something, you have to follow the manga model, have
yeah,
one creator team, stay on it for as long as they can, which I doubt that'll happen because, they're not going to ever own the IP. So the
right,
only other situation I would think would work is to do the Tintin model. Okay, where you just do a series of stories that have a beginning, middle, and end, and just collect them. That's it. Just do series of miniseries, and this way they have their number 1s that they covet so much, and then they can collect that into a trade paperback and just do another, Just do 12 issues a year, volume one, or just don't even do a volume, just say Spider-Man in the League of, Marshmallow Man or something like that. And then have it go run its course, then start all over again.
Or,
Okay, with
or
a new
quit
number
screwing
one.
around. Yeah, or quit screwing around and do a series of books. Like there's one, oh shit, the guy's name is Pearson. There's a cartoon series on Netflix. It's not Astrid. It's a girl's name. Anyway, okay, so, or like with Dogman. Dogman is a series of books. It isn't, and there's no writing for the trade where it's like, oh, we're going to spoon feed it to you over the course of 6 months and then collect it. It's just like when you buy
Okay,
Dogman, it's all
let me
new
ask you a
series.
question. Let me ask you a question. In every Dogman book, is there a recap of his origin?
See, I don't think so. But you kind of don't because it's a book. You don't need that.
Well, if you're a new reader, okay, you probably would at least have some idea, okay, who this Dogman is. Now, I
His origin.
remember,
Well, first of
okay,
all,
well,
his
I
origin.
remember in old Marvel comics, they would have a little blurb at the beginning on the splash page saying, Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider, during a
Oh
science
yeah,
experiment.
okay, yeah. It's not
Yes,
like
that's what a recap
okay. I
of the
think so.
origin.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
They
he
they
used to
would
do
have
that
like
because
the early
Stan Lee
ones.
believed every comic is somebody's first.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And that was, he knew that was for, in order to make new fans, he had to convince them that this was somebody's first comic. You Says here, Joe says, I've been meaning to ask Ben if you consider publishing non-comic books, create a sci-fi.
Wait. No. I want to read this one out loud, and
Okay,
I'm gonna shame you publicly. All
okay.
right. I've been meaning to ask you, Ben. Have you considered publishing a non-comic novels, create a sci-fi fantasy novel imprint? So I did propose to Antarctic Press to publish some light novels, since they're a manga publisher, and light novels would be more adjacent than just regular novels. And it was it wasn't a complete crash and burn, but they were just kind of like, because nobody really knew how to deal with such a thing.
We're not experienced in prose.
Well, right. So A, you're not experienced in prose. B, you're not you don't like really have like prose in the marketplace. Like people don't look to AP for prose novels right now. Like you would have to put out a lot of them. It would have to make a big impact. Like we've got a big name. It's their first novel for us. Blah de blah. And you what was your other reason? What was your other reason?
It's basically, we're not known for it as the main one, but we also, distribution is the biggest problem. Plus, we don't have anybody who can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's well. I mean, but even I don't know. I mean, if I can barely put out a comic,
Well, if I got a submission, okay, let's say I got a submission for Ninja High School,
right?
somebody sent me a prose novel, Ninja High School, and it was really good. I might do it,
Yeah. See,
just to
okay,
see what
so
kind of
I actually
reaction I
proposed. I
get.
don't know if you remember that, but I actually proposed doing that. Me doing that, but again, like I have such a hard time just getting a regular comic out in a timely
I
manner.
mean, I have online read fan fiction of
Mhm.
Ninja High School,
Yeah,
and I have read fan fiction of Warrior Nun,
yeah.
so I mean, it's there fans out there who are doing, prose novels, of our comics,
Was
but nobody has sent them in to be considered public for publishing.
But we also don't have somebody who's got the time to sit down and read a whole novel on a
Yeah.
regular basis and do. Okay, I looked it up. The Hilda. There's a series called Hilda. It's a graphic novel series written and illustrated by the same guy, Luke Pearson. It's on Netflix as well. It was adapted as a Netflix animated series. And he does exactly what you're describing. It's the modern equivalent of Tintin. It's just like it's an album sized banded as in a format, and it's just as there's no there's no
They're
origin
all
story.
self-contained stories.
Right. There's no need for an origin story. She just goes from place to place and has a story and an adventure, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
You know our Italian friend Gianluca.
Hmm.
Um, so when I was editing Zan for Jungle Comics, for those of you who don't know, Zan is a ripoff. Well, strongly based on Tarzan. He's a blonde. He looks like Kazar. He's a blonde guy who lives in the jungle. He wears these leopard skin speedos, talks to animals, has a girlfriend, goes to lost cities, kills a bunch of people. Um, the art's pretty good, but the stories
For
are always
70s.
for this. Yeah, and the art is what it kind of looked like Joe Kubert in a way. So anyway, so I was editing Zan, and I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite, but I love Edgar Rice Burroughs. I love Tarzan, so it's kind of like if I'm going to do the Temu Wish version of Tarzan, I could think of worse jobs. So I asked. So Gianluca is Italian. Our friend Gianluca, he's so Italian. He lives in Italy. He lives in Sardinia, and I said, "Hey, Zan comes from Italy. What's his origin story?" And he says, "There is none." And I said, "Wait a minute, like." He wasn't like found in the everybody knows the Tarzan origin. He was found by apes and they adopted him and all that. There's nothing like that. And he says, no. And I said, so he just like decided one day he was going to live in the jungle and learn how to speak to the animals and stuff. He goes, apparently so. But he says in Italy we don't care about the origin story. We just want that adventure. So like if somebody's a cowboy, it doesn't matter like if his family was killed or if he's on a vengeance mission or whatever. He's a cool guy who rides into town and has an adventure. That's all we need to know about Lucky Luke or whoever. And I was like, really? And so
Yeah. I mean,
that devil
one way to
dog,
approach it.
Dylan dog, they don't care. There's no diabolic. He's a thief. That's all you have to know. So I was like, well, that's a very European attitude. So anyway, but it works. I mean, there's like dozens, if not hundreds, of digest adventures of Diabolic, and there's like Flint Loxus says, "Bet well, Flint always sides with you, Ben. Money motivates Ben." Well, I didn't. This time I didn't say. Yeah, Ben. Okay, so Flint says, "Stop being. He's telling me, stop being disrespectful from Ben. Get off your phone." So number one, I'm getting texts from work. And number
Hello,
two,
everyone.
hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Retro Days is here. He's back in Action 3. Conan the Octogenarian. I can't talk because we've been talking too long. Hey, Larry's in the house.
Hello, Larry.
Larry says Absolute Batman caters to both speculators and brand new readers, as they can start from the start. Young readers don't want to start in the middle of canon. All right.
More or less.
All right.
I still stand behind it. It's not going to last.
You know what, Larry? Because I think of the three of us, you're the one who's actually reading it. I will acquiesce to what you say. The art
Consume product. Look forward to the next product.
Yeah, I love those guys.
That is true, but that's been the way it has been for decades.
Incorrect. Marvel's Ultimate line sold.
I'm sure it did.
I don't know why.
But didn't they cancel it recently?
Well, the Ultimate line was a great idea, and you're right, it did sell until they started meshing it in with the regular Marvel universe because they couldn't help themselves, I guess. And
my understanding is that it was canceled, but correct me if I'm wrong.
And then it got as its own continuity, got as convoluted as the regular continuity, and but I mean,
see, I have more respect for Marvel when they create a new universe than they do with the Ultimate.
Right.
Okay. At least with the new universe, they were willing to take a chance on new characters, and new situations,
Right.
and it just didn't take, but at least they tried something new,
Doesn't help when one of your characters looks like the singer from Kaja Gugu, but there you go. Larry Niobe Comic also says comic companies need to change and adapt.
That is true. It needs to
They
change.
the problem that's easy to say, but they don't know which direction to change and adapt into.
It's hard. It's hard to teach old dogs new tricks.
Well, it's when your IP is that old, you run the risk of becoming how do you do fellow kids memes. So Crooked Painter says Batman is old and busted no matter what they do to him. Absolute Bruce Wayne should own Twitter.
No, Robin should have been Batman. Dick Grayson should have been Batman. Okay, it's the natural progression of things. He trained Robin. It would have been to me, it would have been a no-brainer to have Dick Grayson become Batman.
Okay, so culturally speaking, and these are very broad strokes I'm going to speak in. Don't skip ahead just yet, Ben.
Okay.
These are broad strokes I'm going to speak in, and no disrespect except where disrespect is needed. But the problem we've had for decades now is that boomers do not like to hand down or have the word I'm looking for is passing of the torch. It's like we've got 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds who still are clinging to, like, they're coming up with reasons for Schwarzenegger to age a Terminator robot to age in the Terminator franchise so they could keep him in it as long as possible. They've got a Rambo movie where Stallone looks like he can barely walk, just hobbling around in those caves underneath his estate in that last.
I actually like those movies, to be honest.
So Dark Fate I didn't think was terrible, and Rambo whatever was like fine, but there was a time when those movies weren't just not terrible and fine. They were like, wow, and it's just trying to keep it going. Flint Lockjaw, as long as they're profitable to keep them going, that's fine. But eventually they will wear out and they don't know how to make it like an event again. The James Bond movies, every time they changed actors, it was kind of like a reboot, which kept it fresh. That's one of the freshest.
Well, like Doctor Who.
Right. The two, and they didn't feel like they had to explain everything. Like, I'll be honest with you, I think it was just before the Daniel Craig era started. I sat down and for the first time ever, well, over the course of 2 weeks, I watched all the previous James Bond movies one after another, like 2 a day for a couple of weeks. And I didn't even realize that Felix Leiter was a recurring character because he was played by a different actor in almost every movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until Daniel Craig that the same actor played him like for that run.
Even M was played by different actors.
Right. So and poor Desmond Llewellyn, he's like looking at cue cards off camera for his last couple of movies. But like the Bond movies, I think was the most successful way of keeping things invigorated. And there were good movies and there were bad movies.
Even Godzilla went through changes.
Right.
I mean, he was
different eras.
I mean, there's a way to adapt old IPs, to fit a modern audience.
Right.
Okay, you just have to be willing, to do a good story first of all, and to make changes that seem natural, organic.
Right.
It seems like it makes sense.
Right. Godzilla -1 gave you everything you wanted to see in a Godzilla movie. They did it on a limited budget, but they spent every yen in the right place. And when they show when they show those boats lining up and Godzilla comes out, they start playing the actual old March theme, the dun 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 dun. Dun. I was like, dude, this is worth. I felt seen.
They hit the nostalgic buttons. They hit the right buttons, nostalgic wise, but they created something new for new audiences.
And a teenager now could make that their first Godzilla movie, and I guarantee it will not be their last.
Well, that's the right way to do it. Plus, they did they respected the fans. You see, that's the thing. They
So
knew that they created a Godzilla movie that not only old fans would appreciate, but new fans would enjoy it as well.
Crooked Painter, I didn't finish. Absolute Bruce Wayne should own Twitter, and instead of fighting crime, he should try to buy elections and impregnate hundreds of
That wouldn't
women.
make him much of a crime fighter, if you ask me.
You know what? I'm gonna say Crooked Painter has a good sense of humor there. Like James Ryan, damn, get Elon a bat suit. LOL. No, Bruce Wayne's tech works, says Crooked Painter.
How do we
Michael
know he's not
Days,
Batman?
the Elon mobile would be a black cyber truck with the fins. I gotta say, okay, so
That might work.
I do not want to get into politics, but I do want to say about the Cybertruck that I think Elon must love movies like Megaforce and Death Sport, because if I took a Cybertruck and painted it white and put like yellow lightning bolts on it, I would freaking drive around like a member of Well, I am a member of Megaforce, so
Well,
so I
if you,
would.
if you if you look at those Cybertrucks, they're pretty much a blank canvas. You can do whatever you want with them.
Yeah, I'm surprised some Mexican hasn't put like Aztec calendar artwork on the side of them.
Hello, Rider.
Right. Niobe
So
says, I can
Niobe,
tell you moving forward. Oh, wait, let's chill for Larry for a minute here. I can tell you moving forward, all Niobe and Savage Sin books will be just one shots, every single one of them, with all new number ones forever, just like Lady Death. Bingo. That's a great idea. I,
interesting business model.
yes. And also, hey, you can let's invite Larry to chill some more. Larry is your
Yeah, his campaign's over.
uh,
Congratulations there. He did really well, apparently. He did like 15K
but he's
Canadian, which is really good.
yeah, but he's got something coming out with AP, right? Something.
Yes, now he's coming back to AP. We're going to finish up the last issue so that it can be all wrapped up.
So I'm gonna shill for you with this one, Ben. Hold on. If only Indie Comics would do the Tintin model. Gets old waiting for years after the issue one cliffhanger. LOL. That's true. The cliffhanger thing, the incomplete story with a cliffhanger.
Yeah, can't stand that.
When you're an indie comic, don't, because
Don't do that.
you never know what's going to happen in your life after that first issue comes out.
Yeah.
That freaking I backed that Super Joe comic remember the Super Joe toy line?
No.
You don't remember Super Joe? Was that in between one where they had the
I know the toy, like G.I. Joe, Super Joe.
Yeah, there was the Super Joe toy line. Somebody did a comic based on them recently
Oh,
on Kickstarter.
okay.
And it was
I
like
didn't know there was a comic based on that.
yeah, they did it on Kickstarter, and it's a cliffhanger, and it's like it was a struggle getting that thing over the finish line for the first issue. I can't imagine that they tried to do a second issue, and now I'm like stuck. It's like, well, I guess I'll never know what happens, and I don't care. But
Make your own story.
But you, Ben, you have a Kickstarter going right now called Spy Bunnies.
Yes, I do. It's self-contained, so
self-contained.
No cliffhangers in this one.
No cliffhangers, but wide open to a sequel. Correct.
If I get a good story, yeah, of course.
And then also,
I know how well this one does too.
But it's also based on the European bande dessinée thing, because like a lot of those, it's 60. How many pages long?
60 pages.
So it's 60 pages long. So that is the perfect model we've been talking about, the sweet spot. Just like shoot, I can't remember the girl's name again. Hilda, just like Hilda, just like all those other ones,
Yeah.
all the other Band-Aid.
Well, that's the business model I use for Kickstarters and stuff. What AP does, they break it down, into individual issues, to maximize, the sales, But yeah, for me, I do them as one shots.
How many
The only exception was Kendra. That's the only one that I'm doing as a 3-issue series.
Yeah, because it takes you a long time to. Well, you're doing the art yourself too.
Mhm.
It takes a while.
And I was slow as Christmas.
Yeah. How long was the? How many pages was Toy Box Heroes?
I didn't do that one. That was about 30 pages.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
not too long.
let's see. I don't remember what the dead battery joke was. Retro Day says different distribution channels somewhat. Um, Jay Ryan says pros and cons. PROSE. I get it. It's a pun.
I get it. I get it.
Retro Day says like
Like
every
Tarantino.
movie character. I don't know what that was a
I
reference
still think
to.
he would have made a great Star Trek.
Oh, no backstory like every Tarantino movie character. Some truth to
Oh,
that.
I thought the Kill Bill, the bride, had a backstory.
Yeah, well, it took 2 movies to tell that. Niobe Comics says, Niobe Comic, Larry says, everyone order Superverse Team Up #1 product code
Write down the
zero.
product code.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it twice because you're all boomers and you have to write things down.
So maybe
0326
shall I?
MP0894. Once again, 0326 MP Military Police 0894. Niobe says, "Oh, I am talking to AP. AP needs to change and adapt new comics, fresh series, more manga-like titles." Larry, maybe you don't want to come on that strong for the movies. Flint Lockjaw says Marvel Ultimate has ended. Okay, that was helpful. Niobe comic. Also, everyone comes to the Niobe Outbreak #5 Kickstarter so we can finish the story and so we have something to hand into AP for publication. Publication cannot happen without you. There it is. Well, that's not what he's talking
Featuring
about. That's what they're doing.
Niobe, Tomorrow Girl, and Penguina together for the first time. Our first official Superverse team up.
Isn't you know what? I'll admit this to you. Um,
Yes.
I'll admit this to you. I didn't realize that Goth was a Tomorrow Girl's sidekick character until I read the current storyline with the public domain. So,
Yeah,
which is awesome. The public domain storyline is pretty good. That art, the artwork is,
yeah, Terry Parr is killing it.
that is next level stuff. Flint's Lockjaw says you didn't get that Felix was a recurring character. Where were you watching on 5.5x speed? Okay, so the reason I didn't get it was Felix was a recurring character was because I hadn't seen them in order before. I was just jumping around, and most of them I saw just on TV with a shitload of commercials. So I was not focused on all the side cast. And if I'm watching The Spy Who Loved Me, I'm mostly focused on one character, and it's neither Bond nor the girl, nor Barbara Bach, nor the villain. So,
Also, everyone comes to the Niobe Operating our Frank Sixer so he can finish the story. Yes, he has the late pledges. So if you are interested in supporting Larry and his project, go to his Kickstarter and do a late pledge.
okay, so you reread that. That was cool, but that you can't say it enough times, right?
That's
Retro Day
right.
says, then you stopped to watch GoldenEye 5 times before moving on, right? Right? Okay, so Retro Days, I saw GoldenEye in the theater
He
with a
says,
friend.
you didn't get that Felix is recurring character? What are you watching at 5 times speed?
So that's the joke because on the podcast I'm always telling them about videos that I watch, but I watch them on 1.5 speed so I can watch 2 or 3 times as many videos in the same amount in a short amount of time.
That's no way to watch a movie.
No, well, I just watch when I'm watching a YouTube video. It's just people talking half the time, so I just
Well, at least
you
you're not
know.
doom scrolling.
But you guys don't. I mean, if you watch it any faster than that, then people sound like the chipmunks. But you can get the like this way, like the lulls in the conversation, all that. It's just kind of like no, no, no. Just go ahead. But anyway, so Retro Days with Goldeneye. So I saw Goldeneye in the theater with 2 friends. One of my oldest friends from high school, and a relatively new friend who was like the biggest James Bond fan I knew in the world. He subscribed to the 007 magazine. Well, actually, he would have me get it for him so I could read it, and then I would give it to him. So we were like 3 big James Bond fans sitting there watching Goldeneye for the first time in the theater the weekend it came out. And after we came out, we were like, well, what's with all this character development stuff? Because this was during that era when every other movie was like Die Hard on a whatever. You know, there was like Die Hard, which was like the first real bam, 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 bam action movie, and then Under Siege was like Die Hard on a boat, bam, 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 bam. Die Hard sequels, bam, bam, bam. They were just like they had just American action movie franchises. The adrenaline level and the testosterone was like pumped up, and James Bond just seemed like such a gentleman by comparison when Goldeneye came along. But then we were like, you know what though, that fight at the end was like even more exciting because I was so invested in the character, and I Goldeneye's really really good is the short answer. That theme song kicks ass too.
Richard Day says he hated Shin Godzilla.
No, I was
Well, that
waiting for
definitely wasn't
femur
for everyone
Godzilla.
for sure. But you gotta give him kudos for at least trying something different. You know?
Well, you know what? I've seen Shin Ultraman and Shin Kamen Rider, and both. Of
Yeah, I
those
saw
were
both
like-
of those too as well.
Those are definitely attempts at something different for sure. Jay
You
Ryan,
know, I
Go
would
ahead.
definitely say Ultraman was actually pretty close to the source material.
That's
You
true.
know, Kamen Rider was a little, it was a little slow.
It was
you
like an
know.
art film more than
Yeah.
a Kamen Rider movie.
I was expecting a lot more action, you know, but it just wasn't what I was expecting, you know. Agreed. -1 was excellent, not just the Godzilla, but the film. Oh yes, Godzilla won an Academy Award for that one. See, and then Godzilla was able to regenerate,
Well,
making
let
all
me-
their
let me-
sacrifice pointless.
let me
Well, you
let me
gotta
handle the
have
readings because then
Godzilla.
you Ben, you kind of mumble in the middle and then we can't follow you. All right, Flint Lockjaw says, and then Godzilla was able to regenerate, making all their sacrifices pointless. See, sometimes life seems pointless,
Yes,
and war is hell. GMK Godzilla is a personal favorite. Which one was that?
I think that's the
Oh,
one.
Godzilla's Kong? Mothra?
No, I think that's the one where he beats Anguirus and Baragon, and it was like a big mashup of a bunch of old Godzilla the characters.
Okay, so Larry with his typo says, no, it isn't over. It is now in late pledges.
Yes.
So you can still contribute to his thing.
You still can contribute.
People can still, geez, Larry.
He's
There's a
excited.
program called Grammarly.
That's the Canadian spelling.
No, oh yeah, okay.
The Canadian spelling.
Okay, people can still back Naomi for another 30 days. Retro Day says if they want to introduce some people, some possible threat at the end, that's fine, but not hard cliffhangers. Right.
Yes. That's that whole streaming thing that was like real popular. They do a cliffhanger and then they make you 2 years before they resolve it.
What you do is you have Skeletor stick his head out of the water at the very end, going like, "I'll be back."
But that wasn't a cliffhanger. That was just a tease for the sequel.
And
They did resolve that story, at the end.
So Naomi says, no one needs to read it, copy and paste, eh? No one. Now we are in the modern world now. You knob.
Well, I still like reading physical comics, but I'm an old boomer, so.
Jay Ryan says, I need a pen and my reading glasses to jot that down. Matlock. Flint, okay, so Flint Lockjaw says,
you can never get away with a name like that these days.
Rossi, were you interested in Pussy Galore? I was, but there's no way she'd be interested in me. Get it? I see you. I get you and I see you. Naomi says, my bad typing is your puzzle to figure out. Have fun, hey? I don't have Grammarly.
He's making it a challenge.
And bad typing doesn't matter. For quick moments on YouTube, as long as you know what I was trying to at same the mama dog facing the banana patch, all that matters.
Let's see. I'm just a simple country lawyer. Well,
Matlock.
all right. I think I'm going to wrap this up. I think we've had more
Hey, I don't like
fun.
you making fun. Larry, you got to be making fun of. You got to be like mistyping some of this stuff on purpose at this point.
Yeah, well, we blame
There's better
Canada,
ways to get attention, my friend, and that's by doing a good comic like Niobe.
like South Park says, we blame Canada.
Damn, full
It's
on
not a
hoser
real
voice.
country anyway.
this,
All right,
this is
so
me
I'm
saying,
going to go ahead and wrap things up. But before we do, I'm going to do a little shilling. I do have a Kickstarter going called Spy Bunnies, as Steve has mentioned before. So I'm going to end it with a little trailer
well,
for everyone to see.
before you
And
go, before you go, let me do some shilling too. But go ahead and say what you want to say.
no, that's it.
Oh, all right.
All right. Well, I hope you'll check it out and be a backer.
Yes.
All right. So thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, and
Everybody order Shaman Kane from Antarctic. Well, look under the massive thing. Look under the massive listing, and look under Antarctic. Try to find the Antarctic Press titles in with there. Get Shaman Kane. What else do you got? Order
Cryptic
the
Core, and
Cryptid Core. Absolutely. Niobe. Don't worry. I have no plans to to put a Niobe in anything
all
I'm
right.
working on.
Sayonara, everyone.
Okay, signing off.